I saw your message in the Discord. It's been kind of well, I think it's weird for everybody right now, but um
Mhm.
yeah, it's particularly strange. You know, one thing I wanted to say is okay, if my if my thinking is correct here that if you're in like the active, so okay, think of it this way. So if motivic factivic is something that we can use as a split to understand our brain and where we are like neurochemically, and part of this is just regulation. um I think if you're in one mode, it's easier to stay in it. And
Hmm.
the way to tell if you're still in factivic, even if you feel bad, is if you're trying to figure it out. So this is why I don't like this idea of like
Hmm.
rumination is bad, right? So I think that what needs to happen is you need to figure it out for a bit and then feel like okay, that's a little bit clearer, and then give yourself a break to just like notice things that you like.
Hmm. Yeah, I do try to get to a point of a little more clarity, um, as opposed to just dropping the
Yeah.
thread the moment it feels uncomfortable,
Yes. Yes.
but trying to take a break. Um, the doing that like activity of free associating before checking the messages in that group chat
Hmm.
um reminded me of how I felt when someone told me to breathe as like I was being chased by someone outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't right now.
Right.
I
Right.
need to get to safety first.
Right. Which makes complete sense to me. Yeah. I would say that so if you're in a factivic state, you kind of need to be with other people that also are, or by yourself. That's why it's tricky.
Mhm.
So if they're going to try to make you be in motivic, and we have an overfit culture for that, where they see
Mhm.
movement as you being competitive and not moving as you giving up, right? Instead of resting.
Mhm.
So when they watch signals for you trying to modulate your activity and your stopping and like where you're able to participate and
Mhm.
not, they're going to interpret it as like still doing as arriving or motivic. So you're basically doing the correct thing for yourself to protect yourself. You don't want to like delude yourself that people are acting in this mode that you need them to when they aren't. So
Mhm.
that's smart. I do think I think it's possible to do like the Mr. Rogers thing of like being the example and then some people just mirror you. But this is so
Mhm.
new. I don't know if there'd be a technique to that or how responsive
Right.
any person would be. Yeah, so you probably can get a few people to shift over, but some people will think you're cuckoo. And like, I'm at the point where I've developed a lot of language until I have a paper that like situates it better. It's going to sound
Mhm.
a little silly, but if the idea is that this is a mode in your brain that you're getting to know, then all feedback is
Mhm.
useful. So even that feedback of like that doesn't feel right, then that environment is
Right,
going
yeah.
to, yeah, is predictably going to push you into motivic stuff when that's not what you want to be doing, and it's there's just too much of it.
Hmm. I don't know if the takeaway from today was getting pushed into Motivic so much as like now doesn't feel like a good time for Factivic idle.
Hmm.
Maybe I want to do Factivic
Yes.
active because I
Yes.
was able to
Yes.
do Factivic active after.
Right.
I just wanted to go in with some more spoons,
Yeah.
but I wasn't able to get them from that activity.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, maybe I can do like just like using my weighted blanket where I
Hmm.
don't have to use my brain and get regulation that way. Because the free associating is tied to my emotional state.
Yep. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
because I was like, shoes, oh right, capitalism,
Right. 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 Right.
you
Right.
know?
Right. 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 No. It yeah. So
Detroit. Oh right, ableism.
yes. Well, that's what so Lisa Feldman Barrett talks about that with her theory of construction emotions. Like you have
Hmm.
affective reality. So there's like social reality is the impositions of beliefs that are passed around in a social group, basically. But your
Hmm.
affective reality is where your affect currently is will change what predictions your brain makes. So you'll start to
Hmm.
interpret things with a little extra shading, or things will be available in your brain
Hmm.
to complete the puzzle that normally wouldn't be if you were in a different affective state. So even just
Hmm.
having a meta recognition of that is really good, because that's part of
Hmm.
your way of knowing when to go into a more idle state, and it's going to be not productive, because that's not what we want. It's going to be calming,
Yeah.
right? Like the point of
Hmm.
going to idle is to calm your nervous system and to
Hmm.
also give yourself a chance to experience pleasant sensory information. So, if
Hmm.
direct sensory information at that time is helpful, which is why I think weighted blankets generally are really good for neurodivergent people, because our sensory
Hmm.
processing is more on, in the broadest sense.
Hmm.
So if that's what's going to allow you to like notice sensory information in a way that you can just experience it, that's perfect. Because visual information, if it's making you go into, I need to do something right now, and that doing is like the building, which is great, but it's painful and you're just hurting too much, you need to have a chance to notice feelings that aren't being hurt, like that aren't the feeling of being hurt. And that's what I think
Hmm.
people are getting in churches, and they're getting in these social groups. They're setting up a place where people are allowed to feel pain and allowed to be comforted,
Hmm.
and that hurt is being acknowledged. The same thing with like AA or any of those groups. You get to be honest about the fact that you're in pain, so you can notice it, and then notice all the other sensory information you blocked out as a deal with yourself to get the pain to go away. So if you're
Hmm.
noticing, does that make sense? So if you're noticing something is already painful in you, and you do want to
Hmm.
process it a bit, right? It's important to do that in a place where you can also switch to notice good sensations as well, non-painful sensations. Because the weird thing is, like, even if we're in the most pain ever, this is like a meditation technique that they talk about, I think, everywhere. Like, there's some part of your body that doesn't hurt. So even if like your right finger hurts, your left finger
Hmm.
doesn't, and you can just notice,
Hmm.
like, oh, that's nice. I don't even notice the parts that feel pleasant, because they're
Right.
not talking to me. So you can kind of shift to talk to that. And then the tricky thing in our culture is we don't treat your body and your experience like it matters. So you switching from, like, because I have troubles with this too, obviously, like switching from the whole world to just like, what is my neck doing? It's like, who are you to care about your
Hmm.
neck when everything's on fire? But you feel your neck.
Hmm.
You don't feel the world on fire. You're virtualizing that. So getting to spend, right,
Right.
spend time with the body that virtualizes it on your behalf, and noticing and calibrating what feels good, and listening to that. It's very, very slow, and it may mean just a weighted blanket. You don't have to move. That's what's so important about this. Like, sensing doesn't, for humans, mean movement. And
Hmm.
that's true probably of like an evolutionary kind of look back. There was a time where we were being moved by the world and we were not able to move. Like, that was our first life. It was just kind of like sea anemones almost. So there's a drift. There's a drifting feeling to it. And and that's what I think people have been trying to get with meditation. This feeling of drifting is your mind scanning, and like this gets into like default mode network
Hmm.
stuff, but I think this cleans it up a little bit. So you're letting yourself scan different levels of something, so the dimensions are getting bigger. And if you think the whole world is trying to compress dimensions, like almost literally, like if you were looking at an icosahedron from above and you tried to see all the lines, it would just look like a weird shape, like a star shape or something, right? So you're letting it, like, I got it. You know, when we were kids and we had those little sponges that were like little pellets, and then they blew up to a big sponge, like of like an animal or something.
Hmm.
That's what you're doing. So suffusion is you're letting the compressed thing get immersed and then regain its real shape.
Hmm. Okay. Um, Putting that together, I realized maybe like free associating from a whole object may not be like as helpful for me as just
Mm-hmm.
like a specific aspect that is like more neutral
Yeah.
and not tied to society. Like I like listening to music and like
Yeah.
picking apart, different elements of songwriting
Yeah.
because that's like something technical that's not like the social element. Or I mean, there can be like aspects that are more that, like the verse structure and how things build, but like overall, it's not like tying to society as much, especially if I listen to music where that's like not the theme. Um, or like just thinking about the colors of an image, if it's not like one that has like a really strong message, or even if it is, if I can just like
Mm-hmm.
focus on that, as
Yes.
opposed to like, what object does this object make me think of?
Yeah.
Like, oh, shoes, back when I had money,
Right.
and
Right.
like
Right.
wanted to buy all these other shoes. Like, if I could just look at the colors of the shoe
Mm-hmm.
and like the pattern,
Mm-hmm.
um, that might be better for like yeah, noticing like the different aspects of a thing and how they fit together
Mm-hmm.
versus like trying to draw the most like compressed version to the point that you can't even recognize what it is. But
Yes.
like, since, like, if I was talking with someone else, they may be able to tell me, like, what is this? And like push me back into thinking deeper. But if I'm just doing it alone and compressing more and more and more,
Yeah.
I feel like that can get dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and that's what our culture would have taught us to do, right? Like that's the result, that's the deliverable, is the ultra
Hmm.
compressed thing that you can then share
Yeah.
to a busy executive. So
Um,
uh
yeah.
yeah, I agree with what you're doing, and like from the theory it would make sense too, because so the idea is that building is it's local featural processing, and the other
Hmm.
one is this global configurational one, which I think isn't truly configurational because I think it flattens, so it's a little bit even deceiving.
Mm.
So what you're trying to do is find a feature and even the features of the feature. So it's like this kind of fractal experience. So then
Mm.
the level of abstraction you're getting to is actually like it's pretty high level abstraction if you think about it, because like you could look at the letter D and how you write the cursive letter D and realize like, oh, that looks like a leaf. I never noticed that. Huh. And then you're thinking about just the shape of a leaf. You know what I mean? Like it could go somewhere from there, but it doesn't have to. It could go more fundamental, that like leaves are shaped like a sort of teardrop shape. That's interesting. You're basically thinking about a circle at that point. Um, or even just the feeling of looking at a circle. It doesn't have to be a cognitive mode of a circle. Like you could just really think like times that the light receptors in your eyes saw a circular shape and what that's felt like over your life. You could just go there, because the idea is that you're allowing your mind to kind of rest inside of the field of experiences that you've already had. So
Hmm.
you're never really in like the present moment. Like even literally we're on a delay. Our processing speed is slower than our ability to be in any environment taking in light or sound.
Hmm.
So we're predicting to fill in the blank anyway, while our brain catches up.
Hmm.
So what you're allowing yourself to do is like decouple information from what it's been packaged as, and you just allow it to have one feature, if that one feature is a feeling of listening to music, or it really doesn't have to be specific. When we did the
Hmm.
example, that in a way it's not doing justice to the exercise, because I needed to articulate it, and some of these things you'll notice they can't be captured in words, and
Hmm.
words will compress. Words will take the parts around it and smash it into a flat shape like a leaf being pressed down. So if you
Hmm.
if you're noticing just a vague feeling, that's a better guide, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to like get your brain to switch over to a more like opioid, really specifically oxytocin, and more I'm looking at this, but your brain has to feel there's a shift in how you're moving or not moving your body. Like the decision to move or not move your body is now coming from a different cognitive metabolic mode.
Huh. I'm writing that down. Yeah, a lot of food for thought. Yeah, and it's interesting, like thinking about abstraction and how I've often thought of abstraction as compressing things more, but that's different from the way you're describing it. I also don't know like how far we want to go down that thread, or if there's anything else you want to talk about today, or if anything Shadow wants to talk about. Yeah, also just to catch you up, Shadow, we last time talked about how in arriving mode there's like there's doing as building and arriving, and then there's also like sitting still, but in a mindset of arriving versus building. And like I've been experimenting with how to get into the building kind of like the kind of rest that we need to be ready to build later, and just figuring out what does and doesn't work there.
I would like to talk about the abstraction thing a tiny bit now, if that's okay, because I think this is important. Did you learn the concept of abstraction more from like a linguistic standpoint or a mathematical one?
Probably math.
Okay. And how would you describe your understanding of like the difference between more or less abstract?
So, I think of abstract as like more conceptual and farther from the details of like day to day. But I know like there's not a dichotomy like that. And it like we need a way to talk about things more in general as opposed to just a specific experience. Like we need, like ways to build schemas in our mind.
Yes. Yeah.
And in tech, I see that done a lot based on generalization. Versus if we look at math, like in set theory, it's all about looking at the edge cases and vetting, like, does this theory really track? Which is pretty different from the, like, businessy, collapse everything to the average case.
Yeah. Well, in the average case, so I'll argue for a way of thinking about abstraction that's helpful. It's still based in mathematics too, so this should feel like a comfortable switch. So if something's more abstract, it's at the same time much simpler, and it's the potential is more complex, but the situation is simpler than if it's more concrete or specific. So if you get down to a concrete everyday specific example, the complexity the actualized complexity is much higher, because now we've set limits on things. We've said, well, this is here and that is there, and this is doing this and that is doing that. So all of these relationships are locked in place because they define that specific instance, right? So that's very complex, as all those factors have to participate, or else you're no longer talking about the thing that you've decided to call this category, this set, right? So if you go up levels of abstraction, or it's really go out, like it's really not a hierarchy, it's a zooming out. You include more of the world potentially, but you're not including it specifically. It just could be included. So if we go to like 2 carrots in my backyard, right? And I'm supposed to get one of those 2 carrots in my backyard. That's very limiting in where I can go, and there's certain complexity that's introduced that limits how I can succeed at it. So that's the least abstract in this example that I'll give. But then somebody can say, well, I honestly just need any carrot. So now I don't have to get the one from my backyard. Now I just need a carrot. Now I'm one abstraction up. It's just carrots. But it's even better if somebody says, I just need one of 2. Find something that has 2 and I just need one. Now the potential is everywhere. Like I could find 2 of just about anything and take one of them and give it to you. And I've succeeded. So the more abstract case lets me ponder the concept of 2 to 1. Or like I need something orange. Now I'm pondering the concept of orange. And the reason why you would want to do this to get into like the factivic mode is you're facing the feature and then it's facing you back and changing the next thing you face. And this is the social relationship we want to have as well if we're both in factivic. So I call it facing because like the idea is like you're looking at this and it's looking at you. You're changing it and it's changing you, and you're changeable. And if you're in motivic, you really don't want to be changeable. You want to be Usain Bolt who reliably does the thing every single time. You don't want the carrots to suddenly not be in the backyard. So you're so you're moving your cognition out of meeting a demand and into meeting a property or quality and just letting your brain try to understand it. So factivic is understanding. Motivic is not understanding. And this is why we have people who don't understand anything running things. So if the understanding takes you to a place where you don't want to go into more specific understanding, I'm saying you could keep going back out. So if you're like, okay, the shoes are making me think about this. Okay, well, maybe I don't need to think that specifically. I think you're correct about that. But allow yourself to, I'm trying to think of a way to put this. Notice when it doesn't feel okay for you to just like be curious about why, and that's why I think this is what meditation is trying to do, right? This is why I think meditation kind of works, but kind of doesn't, because it doesn't make this explicit that you are changing your brain, and you will feel a form of motivation. So you already live in a world that's overfit for you to be active. So even fictivic or factivic is good, but we're being shoved out of idle way too much. And in factivic, that's where it feels the best. That's where we need to start to get our oasis of regulatory chemicals. So my argument is that we need to get into idle factivic to calm down and regulate, so that nobody tries to put us into motivic to go numb to regulate. So yeah, so you may need to have like, I'm trying to think of this, almost like guides that you can find, because their abstraction takes you back to them. So like if it can be a number guide, that would be great. Like I'm like semi-obsessed with triangles now, because we all know, because I'm like, Buckminster Fuller, yeah, this is great, tetrahedrons. So if I end up and I could abstract all the way to 3, then I could even just think about like, oh yeah, like the world is really this really dense field of possibilities, and I can go to a vague feeling of what's a possibility, or like what's the universe look like, what does the sky look like. I'm kind of just allowing myself to say, oh, if I think about this really abstract concept, it gets me to a thing that lets me be idle, a feeling that lets me be idle, that will face me and let me be changed by it. This is probably why people like the idea of God, right? So you're sitting with this eternal thing that doesn't care about time, that's just letting you saturate and letting your little sponge plush back out any way that it wants to go. And you need those possibilities to expand, because that's what you're recovering, because the motivic makes you go tunnel vision.
Yeah. That's really interesting. about how factivic is understanding. I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to understand lately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like I think that's a really good point to think about there. Um, yeah, and like what ways are we abstracting? What does it even mean to abstract? How can we do it in a way that's less biased?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah, like
slow.
I
It's slower if it's less biased. Does that make sense? Because I think we abstract and then we actually
Mhm.
collapse down without noticing again. Because like we're not allowed
Mhm.
to go into a place where we don't know how to label things and what their purpose is. If you get to a place where it's like, well, I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that is related to that, but maybe it's not, or maybe it will be later. I don't know. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of a weird, scary place to be because it's not as certain, but but
Yeah.
it's also good because you know these certainties are distortions and biased.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about like how to research things and like what kind of synthesis to do because a lot of the time like I'm not able to categorize things right away
Yeah.
really simply. And like I may, have clarity on a couple things and questions about way more. Um, and I think like instead of just crowdsourcing data and sharing that, like would it also help to crowdsource like questions and like what
Wondering.
assumptions we may see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like this blog. It's about AI. Um, yeah, I can put it in the chat. And like trying to build AI to reason and help with brainstorming. And the author, who's an AI or like um, cognitive science, kind of tied to AI student at Stanford, like goes through different frameworks that people use for reasoning and how AI might be able to do some of these things, but also is it even worth doing? Are there even like fully defined problems or, you know, is there even fully defined data or, like semantic versus episodic information and how episodic is always incomplete? And yeah, it really got me thinking. And one of the things mentioned in this blog is Socratic questioning as one approach to like identifying the first principles, quote unquote, of something.
Yeah.
And I find that like there are people who, like thought leaders who talk about first principles a lot. But then when I'd see the examples of first principles, I'd be like, this is so biased. Like,
Yeah. 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 They
how are
have.
you deciding that this is more important than that?
Yep.
And the steps of this Socratic questioning method, um, it starts with like clarifying definitions, then uncovering assumptions, explore evidence, search alternatives, check implications, question the question. And when I notice like where are people communicating with others and asking for feedback, it's often later, like after they've already come up with either a whole product
Mm-hmm.
or at best a theory.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see people crowdsourcing, okay, I want to learn more about such and such. What assumptions might I be making? And get like 50 people's input on that. So yeah, I thought about writing a blog about that. And because there's this trend now of co-design and like building things in community, getting people's like collaboratively deciding what to build.
Yes.
But it often turns into there's the person coming in with the end goal in mind and getting little feedback on tweaks and mostly sourcing quotes about what like why what they're already doing is working, which is a thing you'd mentioned before.
Yeah.
There's actually another blog which kind of touches on this. About how a lot of this works. And as like the field of research and tech that I was doing is falling apart, and I've been debating, do I want to be in academia? But I'm like, I know I'd have to jump through so many hoops to get there, and then
Yeah.
I might still not be able to do what I actually want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm like, would I rather help people in other ways, maybe fill in the gaps that aren't being filled, and just think about different ideas of how we can do that and how we can have conversation that's not just collapsing things more and more. Like, I feel like we can't even discuss individual issues anymore. Like, I like this app called Clubhouse where so it's social audio like this Discord, you know, where no one has their video on. And it used to be like a lot of talk about different fields and like interdisciplinary discussion from people who seriously explored different things. And then it kind of devolved into just the people who aren't really thinking deeply about anything being there for the most part.
Yeah.
And this last week, it's been a lot of political discussion based on a certain event,
Uh-huh.
but it immediately devolves into like really like extreme, or not extreme, but it's like there are like 2 or 3 different dominant views about things like racial dynamics, for example.
Yeah.
And they're also packaged with views about gender dynamics and a bunch
Correct.
of other things. And
Yep.
it just turns into like pointing fingers at these groups and making a bunch of extrapolations about them rather than looking at the details of what happened with this event. It's just using it as proof. And someone was pointing out how like people on different sides are using it as proof for their side. You know, like this thing happened and the evidence of it happening proves, you know, a racist idea for one side and an anti-racist idea for another side.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really have good logic for why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've been seeing a lot of that more and more lately. Versus before, like a decade ago, I felt like we could have a conversation about a thing that happened in the world without it immediately becoming about putting it under a worldview. And I also saw a lot more people switching politically.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw like a gradual move towards people valuing certain things more. And then now all of a sudden it's like we got this divide where people want either this or this. And I don't feel like it's very welcoming to change their minds about an individual thing, because it's like, what now? Pick up this whole other ideology, like and like even if they'd end up agreeing with it in the long run, like if it's to enter this room, we'll assume you already agree with all of this, as opposed to just like to enter this room, watch the inner ring, and then like adapt your views based on where you come, where like you're starting, based on like real conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, just thinking about how to do more of that, and what that could look like. Yeah, Shadow, I hear you about forming coherent sentences being slow. Yeah, and if there's ever a point where you like have things about before that you want to talk about, like we can do that. And if you'd rather do it via chat, that's totally cool too. Just want to like see what we can do for you to
Yes,
feel as included as possible.
absolutely. And yeah, any things we can try out too. I'm always open to new ideas too for like accessibility and stuff. Okay, I had a thought. So the reason why I think the first principles things breaks down, there are some things that are unquestionable. So they're like, you can't introduce this as the null hypothesis because there's a threat if you start to question it. So let me think about how to put this. We're vaguely aware of that, but we don't really, in my opinion, we don't know where the line really is on that, or like where that concept starts to influence people. So it starts much more central and fundamental. So like I was thinking, like if you had to get like the trunk of the evergreen or whatever, and not all of the ornaments, what is that, right? Like what is holding all of this up? And that's the problem you have, because I'll just say it plainly. Certain people, and we kind of know which ones they are, and we kind of know why. Their delusions are taken as reality.
Yeah.
And because we don't acknowledge it as a delusion, and this is why I was arguing it's on the spectrum of delusional disorders, they're responding to us, challenging it the same way anybody with a delusion would respond. So we're trying to avoid that, because people, if you challenge somebody on a delusion, they're going to say you're crazy. And it's going to be really, 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 really incredibly unpleasant.
Wow. Yeah, that reminded me of that experience that I talked about in Affect First Aid, where I reached my limits of what I could take with the expectations to caretake for the person who was running a group. When she trauma dumped an experience she'd had, which was like 100% worse version of an experience that I'd had, that I was like really shook by. And I like didn't bring that up because I didn't want to have to caretake for whatever came next.
Yeah.
And then I just but because of that, I didn't have the bandwidth to like handle her convoluted reasoning about how to solve a pretty simple logistical thing. And how, like, you know, her going, I'm trying, was just pissing me off at that point.
Yeah.
And I like tried to voice that, and then she's like trying to diagnose me with conditions, and I was just like really shook. I'm like
Yep.
Oh, what was this? Like I figured it's like probably just because like she felt like accused. But maybe there is more to it, of like someone questioning her logic, because she did seem very, like, she was mentioning things like being shocked that no one wanted to like join her hackathon projects as a company, like, because they're changing the world. Yeah, but if you bring a world-changing idea to a bar, it's still a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
People are there to shoot the shit.
Right.
And she just like the fact that she wasn't able to recognize things like that.
Yeah.
Signals delusion to me.
Yeah. I'm
not saying like she has a delusional disorder, but just like she's probably surrounded by a lot of deluded people all day, and writing off anyone who doesn't fit that. Or maybe other people are better at recognizing this and kind of like avoiding it. Like, for example, there was another person at this event who was like trying to move the conversation along and away from her, or being like, I need to get some work done. I'm going to put my headphones in now, which like I wanted to be fair. And like, if I'm asking for space, I should give this person hosting the event space too. But maybe this other person saw it coming that like she was taking space that like people weren't equipped to give.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And probably I think that non-autistic or like a lot of neurotypical people have that ability pretty well defined and usable. And I've been working on it since they were kids. I don't think it's a perfect tool because I think they can also be really mean to people for no reason. Like they overfit that tool, but yes, I think so. And also okay, if you use featural information to navigate the way that I think is happening for autistics and beyond, you will say like, no, that's wrong though. Like the person that's like, I have this delusion, you're like, yeah, but that's wrong. Like, and you'll keep saying it because it's wrong and it bothers you that they keep saying something that doesn't make sense, or that they're working with something as like the underlying justification that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm like, you can't do the thing you're doing because the thing you're standing on is nonsense. Like you're levitating, you're not standing on anything. So I think I'm helping them by letting them stand on actual things, and they think I'm attacking their something, their foundation, their sense of security or whatever. And I'm like, well, you can't feel secure because that's wrong. So if you feel secure, that's extra bad because now you can't tell when you should feel insecure. Right. So I'm trying to correct the person being outside of reality, and that this has happened. This attempt, I think, has happened so many times that now the people that have like what I call abusive psychosis have learned to tell people to get them to back off, like, hey, you're not in reality. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to like? So they know that works because the people that really care about that's why they interrupted them in the first place, was to do reality testing, right? So if you interrupt somebody with that, they will more than likely self-reflect and try to double check that they're not the crazy one. But the person with the abusive psychosis never really does that. I think they've just learned that gets people off their back. So that's weird. Like, that's super weird. But it's hard to believe that somebody can be functional and yet, how do I explain this? I don't want to say like I'm shitting on people.
Yeah.
But okay, so people can be really functional and not care about the real information. Like, not even like it's a matter of opinion. It's like, no, this is how those things came to exist. Like cause and effect relationships recorded in history, right? There's people that like don't want to know that's real, and it's that's why you're having problems. I would also argue with like the trying to get to first principles. So if you haven't accepted, like, there's your first principle, is that you have people that are delusional, and humans are you know what I mean? Like, humans are really good at being socially acceptable while being totally delusional.
Yeah, like also a lot of the norms about like talk in a way where you don't hurt people's feelings so they can't pay attention. Like, don't tell people no, tell them maybe when you mean no.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, okay, so if we had an idea of like liking what you like doesn't mean you're in a competition, right? Like, because then you could like different things instead of everything you like and not like being about a competition, which makes us seem really immature, which makes us, I think, vulnerable to listening to the idiotic ramblings of 16-year-old boys who are thinking that way because their brain isn't done developing and they're just trying to figure out what's cool, right? So like if I like or dislike this, I'm going to be thrown out of a social group. That can't be the way you live your life. That's not good. And then also people don't understand why you like or dislike something because they've stopped listening to like the explanation. They're just seeing like, well, that's a signifier that you're with this group or this group if you like or dislike. So yeah, I'm not sure
Hmm.
how to fix that right now because people are well, okay, so basically, like the tribalism sort of conversation, or the idea that we're getting into cliques and we're being unreasonable. We're being unreasonable
Hmm.
because we are listening to delusional people.
Hmm.
That's why we're being unreasonable. Regardless of if they're in a clique or they're our mom or they're like whoever it is, our president,
Yeah.
we are listening to delusional people. That is our problem, and that's going to be more difficult to correct when we've been used to it to this degree. But that's why I ended up doing what I'm doing with the I think okay, metaphorically at least it's strong enough to say that there's two tracks and we can toggle between them. I think we just have to toggle out of motivic because it's obvious to me that this motivic active especially, but also the idol, is abused and used by delusional people to
Hmm.
maintain their delusion at the cost of anything and everything in reality.
Hmm. Yeah, thinking about how do we get people out of that like liking and disliking is an in-group, out-group thing. I'm trying to think of where have I found counterexamples to that. So, for the most part, I've found it in groups that are that are like counterculture or, like built around the idea that the things that work for most people won't work for the things this group is doing, or like some activity that not everyone's interested in, so there aren't like stereotypes. There's no like stereotype for how to show up in this group because like this group isn't a normalized thing in any like subgroup in society.
Mm-hmm.
Um and like we all share some like we like certain ideas, but then there's like diversity and everything else, and we're like interested in learning about diverse experiences. Like I've noticed in some multicultural groups, like not a group where it's like an affinity group for people from a certain culture, but like where the group is all about like appreciating different cultures, like um there's more of an understanding that you can listen to an idea without having to agree or disagree right away. And you
Mm-hmm.
can just be like, okay, maybe the learning is that some people think that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe you may not node on it right away. Um, but like I haven't seen that as much with when people go to groups more for support on getting to a certain place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but I had this interesting counterexample lately. So Matthew, the autism coach, who I mentioned, recently started this group for former students of his, and or like people who did like his workshops. And there's a lot of variety for why people do these what is autism workshops. Um, a lot of people just want a fix to some situation in their life and not to go deconstructing deeper. And so this group has a lot of variety. But I've noticed like people I've noticed like there are some more arriving people there, but it doesn't take over everything from everyone at all times. And this group started like maybe a month or so ago, and I feel we've already gotten a lot better at navigating it.
Nice.
So like there's this one guy who had a very niche career and wasn't exposed to how different things are in different places
Mhm.
and hasn't had his views challenged very much. But so he wasn't trying to like convert, like, proselytize different views, but when people shared like more cutting edge views or that things had been refuted about education or like tech project management, he's like, this is how it's been done for 20 years. And like there was one time
Ooh.
someone was um like thought he was coming at them, and
Mhm.
things got tense, and then Matthew was like, this isn't a place to one up each other, like it's a place to have nice conversations. And then there was another time when, yeah, he was like, this is how this thing's been done for 20 years. And then I like didn't respond directly to him, but responded more to the thread from the person before, who was voicing like issues with this project management methodology. And I was like, I've seen it kind of butchered in implementation, or like I was like, I've seen a lot of project management frameworks get butchered in implementation, like this one, for example. It's
Mhm.
like acknowledging that, but not like responding directly and, like making an
Yeah.
argument back and forth. And that conversation just like moved on without stopping there.
Mhm.
And then there was another conversation which started yesterday about careers in tech, and he like was saying something which could have been taken a lot of different ways about like seniority and the responsibility there. And I was just like, yeah, that second part of what you mentioned, I don't think was done at companies I worked at. And then like I forget what happened next. And then I said, I think like he like was like, wait, so you did such and such? And I was like, yup. And then I gave a little more detail about that, and he was like, I have never seen that before. It's like
Mm.
that showed like he was like open to like hearing new information like that. But then today, so him and another person were continuing to talk about that thread, and he said agree to disagree,
Mm.
and the other person didn't understand like what he meant by that, because he was like, I didn't think we were have a disagreement. I was just like sharing my perspective, which like
Right.
I be I was a little bit surprised by that person thought agree to disagree was harsh, because like I'm like I would have interpreted it as like we've had different experiences, but I guess it is like talking in absolute terms, which like this guy said he was trying not to do, but he has a really hard time with it.
Yeah.
And then he was like, yeah, it's an argument because you say something and either I agree or I disagree, or I just don't want to talk anymore about it, which is why I said agree to disagree. And
Right.
then the other person's like, there are other types of discussions where we talk about different experiences which are not like an argument.
Mhm.
Um, so what do you want to do? Like, are you saying you want to stop talking, or you have a question? And this guy was like, stop talking. I gotta go. And
Oh.
the other guy's like, cool. And then Matthew was like, yeah, we can have conversation, like we can share different experiences without it automatically being a argument. And
Yeah.
like it was interesting to like get this view into where this dynamic with this guy who was like getting like this, like in all these different conversations, was coming from. Like, oh, like he processes any piece of information as like must agree or disagree.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I'm reading what Shadow said. I've always found it funny when people have disagreements about effectively whether something is an argument or not.
Well,
Yeah, that was
that's
what happened.
so that's a skill in formal argumentation, which is why I think people should learn formal argumentation. So that's why you have to clarify your terms. And this also gets into the problem with abstraction. So usually when people think that there's an argument, so there's disagreements and then there's apparent disagreements, which are not actual disagreements. Now that doesn't mean that they wouldn't disagree if they got onto the same level of abstraction, but they're not on the same level. So most of them, that's the problem, and that comes from not clarifying your terms, so you literally don't know what each other are talking about. You haven't checked that your sense of the word is the same as their sense of the word or the term or the relationship. So you're not actually talking about the same thing. So that's most of the time what happens, and like it's happening online a lot. So people haven't learned this. They learn it's annoying because they're fanboying over formal logic. I'm like, well, then why didn't you do formal argumentation if you're going to use the logic to do arguments? Like, guys, hello, like it's not taught consistently in colleges, but a lot of communication studies classes or rhetoric classes that'll be the first thing they do is like take you through this, and it's formulaic, like you can put it into a logical formula. I don't have it so well memorized. I keep looking for a good guide and I can't find a really good one, but if you get a good guide of this, it'll just walk you through it and you can plug it in like you would like a quadratic equation or something, like it's or algebra.
Yeah, that's really funny and interesting. I'm trying to think like how all of this fits with delusion. So it looks like people can be delusional about different things, and that can be ambiguous. So they can be delusional about what the facts we're looking at and the reality is, and they can also be delusional about or incorrect about the type of conversation we're having.
Correct.
Like whether it's an argument or not.
Yes, or there's another level of abstraction up of delusion there. They are delusional about whether they can tell if there is an actual or only apparent disagreement. So they are delusional about whether they know if something is an argument or not, which they do not. And then so the argument then becomes the only argument you can make in such a case, you have to argue with a person like you are not very good at abstract reasoning and don't know it. That's the only argument they're left with, which is not fun for someone to have to defend. But that's effectively what they've argued, is that like if you say something that doesn't make sense, and the other person says something that doesn't make sense in a different way, nobody's winning here, right? Both people are saying things that are nonsensical, like that just simply cannot be defended by anyone in material reality ever. So yeah, so what you want people to do, and this is category theory, right? So the problem is we don't teach like group theory and topology until we've gone through times tables, arithmetic, algebra, calculus, and you're done all the math, and then you get to know category theory, maybe in college, and then maybe if you're the biggest nerd ever, you go to the highest level of mathematics, which is group theory and topology, which is where you start to learn about this. Or if you go the rhetoric route, they actually teach you really quickly because you have to, or you're going to break arguments all the time. You will learn. You see what I'm saying? So math uses it. Set theory, category theory, that all makes sense to have to use to put together very complex equations in real world situations. But if you're trying to use words to isolate groups, which you'll need to do as a statistician, you'll need to do it if you're writing a report, you just need to know who belongs here and who belongs there. You have to be able to put that into words in so many communication disciplines, communication dependent disciplines, that they teach it, but maybe not directly. If you go into rhetorics, they teach it directly, and I know if you pursue
Mm.
some communication studies teachers will obsess with it, but like I didn't have one that did. I got it because I was interested in rhetorics, and yeah,
Mhm.
and found better guides on my own as well, besides for books. And yeah, so
Mhm.
the traditional way that we're learning math is wrong, and that's why you're having so many people who struggle with this. So they're
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of how to put this. They like concrete examples more than the abstract ideas. They feel more comfortable with the concrete examples than the abstract ideas.
Mhm.
And they don't know why. But working with abstract ideas is, in my opinion, is what you need to use factivation for, and it doesn't feel good. So there's this myth of like the genius who can just think naturally about how things are connected, and that's not how it works. You always start from understanding that getting the categories right is the most important part, and that doesn't feel good.
So, a couple things to respond to. So first, I think with the concrete examples, I think that's helpful for when, like, to kind of bypass the seeing how the other person is categorizing things,
Yes.
or, um, because like I would need to know their train of thought of factivating things to like find the biases and everything there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can look at the individual data point and like just point out the biases there,
Mm-hmm.
which is a smaller problem. Okay, like going from the complexity of like, you know, throwaway details of, I was standing at the bus stop and it was raining, and like just pinpoint a few things that are important from myself and construct my own abstraction and check that against theirs. I feel like I've generally had better luck there
Mm-hmm.
than someone coming in with an abstraction. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it looks cool, but I would need 20 minutes to like suffuse that for myself
Mm-hmm.
before I could have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And like I would need to ask so many questions to understand how they got there.
Yep.
Like honestly, when someone shows me like a framework, if it happens to be like close to things I've already thought about, then I can start asking questions like, oh great. Versus if it's like a different world and I recognize that, then I'm like, well, I can't have a conversation just based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And like my path to understanding their world can be either like based on concrete examples from their life
Mm-hmm.
or what they have to say about concrete examples from my life. And
Mm-hmm.
then bridge that to me being able to understand their abstraction.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, I'm following.
so there's that. And then about the how to argue when people like think everything is an argument, or they're like categorizing things wrong, basically.
Mm-hmm.
um I find like the example I just gave, I don't know like if he ever ended up changing his understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But like even just the other person saying we can have a discussion without it being an argument. And then I thought he did the next thing really well. So he said that. And rather than just leaving it for the person who doesn't get it to be like, no, but like since he'd already said we can agree to disagree, and that means like I don't want to talk about it anymore. This person was like, there's this option of having a non-argument conversation. Now, would you like to do that or would you like to not?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person said, I'd like to stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think there are more options that you're not seeing. How would you like to move forward? Could give them an out in a way. Like, also the fact that he was saying agree to disagree, like, shows like he didn't feel the need to win.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, he didn't want to factivate, but he also was willing to not convert people to his way of thinking.
Right.
Does
Right.
that make sense? Versus the person, yeah, I was trying to draw a contrast to the person who is trying to armchair diagnose me with things. I had said I think we have different definitions of, I forget what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like polite or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like, maybe, but you blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she like felt the need to win, kick me out, kick me while I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
Versus this other person wanted to be left alone with his way of thinking.
Yep.
And like maybe, but was willing to like have people around him thinking differently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe over time, if things are phrased in a way like, sometimes I feel like it takes the right example, the right situation for someone to have an aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes people are just not willing to face from a certain point.
So I want to
Does that
bring
make sense?
it makes sense, and I want to suggest something that would be explaining that potentially, and also offering
Mm-hmm.
a different, slightly different paradigm or approach. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're learning math, or like a lot of math teachers, especially if it gets more abstract, like if we go into category theory, they will say examples first. Like that's their mantra. They'll give examples
Mm-hmm.
first before they talk about the theory. But
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the same problem we have with teaching, like teaching abstraction so late that we don't understand why you would want to lead with the abstraction, or at least set up with the abstraction. So if you do the example first, the example you pick or they pick may be completely uninteresting or totally unfamiliar to the person listening. Like they have no idea what they're
Mm-hmm.
talking about. And so you can't really jump them over. And the reason, like from a linguistic standpoint, you would use an example is you would actually try to do a metaphor bridge. So you use a relationship
Mm-hmm.
that's analogous and has the same components acting in the same roles that they know, to move them to one that they don't know, that they're unfamiliar with. And that's reasonable, but that assumes that you already are abstracting out to say, okay, well, they believe, I know they will believe these sorts of examples are valid examples. Now I need to move them to this example that contradicts their current example a little bit to show them my theory. So we should be, see what I'm saying? So I think we should actually do more theory first, not examples first, but we're not comfortable with it because it does take a while, and it will take a lot less time if the other person knows that we're doing theory first and doesn't try to, what I'm calling, collapse down to examples. So if we think of examples as a collapsed state in the sense that like you're looking overhead and it's visually compressed, that rigidity can make someone confused about what you want them to do next. So if they use an example that they do accept, but they always go somewhere next with it that is not at all what you're trying to talk about, they've also started to try to take control of the relationship. And if they're motivic, they're going to feel good doing that. They're going to grab the reins and run the horsey off the cliff, right? So you need to think of it like you're in a helicopter and you're trying to give them a full view of the city before you both decide where you're going to go, that you both know in the city. Because if they don't know the example in the city that you know, then you're going to have to figure out if there's anything you know about each other. And that's when you can really discontinue the conversation, because you're not on the same terrain at all. And that's not personal. And sometimes it's unfortunate when that happens, but we're not very good
Mm-hmm.
at being like, oh yeah. And then you'll get people pretending that they're familiar with this, metaphorical city that they've never even gone to. And like I've had people do that with feminism recently, and I was like, dude, like I know you've never known feminism. You don't know her. You've never been here. Like just like so you don't want
Mm-hmm.
someone trying to prove how good of a tour guide they are because they think that that's going to give them relief on some level that our society has promised for pretending you know things you don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
so possibly the person was ejecting because he thought he was going to have to um, fight with someone about what he knew and didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have been kind of trained to be an examples kind of guy. So I know that
Mm-hmm.
can feel comfortable for people, but like we might need to start giving them examples of like why examples fail. And if you always are doing the
Mm-hmm.
examples first way of communicating to people, everybody has a theory. Like so so
Mm-hmm.
and I mean category theory is basically saying that everybody is developing categories throughout their lives that they have determined the world cares about and will care about, and so they can then act according to these categories and have outcomes that are predictable. Great, right? Like the universe is not indifferent to our theories, so that's why we use them. We think the universe will respond to us applying that theoretical understanding of how reality works. So if you can get
Mm-hmm.
people up to that level just for a moment, then where they fly their helicopter, you can decide together, right? Does that make sense? So like that's the
It
purpose of it, but you may not be able to make that decision with a lot of people.
That all makes sense. And I can think of times when examples led to distraction. Like, okay, I'll give an example from today, where I went to this chat room on Clubhouse, this app I mentioned, and it was titled, what was it? Like, Provincial Nativists and Rootless Cosmopolitans. And so I asked the person who started it, like, so what'd you start this room about? And then he leads with, so would you consider yourself a provincial nativist or rootless cosmopolitan? And I picked rootless cosmopolitan. What about you? And he's like, well, it depends how we define these things. And I'm like, so how do you define them?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, I don't know. And why I started this room, there was this other conversation that inspired it. And I noticed these people being like this and how they're different from me. And I tried to, like, I guess, do some category defining with him.
Yep.
And like maybe define some subcategories. Because he was like, yeah, natives are upset that the cosmopolitans are sending the jobs overseas. And I'm like, have you heard them blaming cosmopolitans for that? Because I noticed that most cosmopolitans are also upset about the people who are sending jobs overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was like looking for examples to latch onto.
Yeah.
It felt like, to be able to drive to like whatever felt like an opportunity to vent about things he wanted to talk about or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was this one point where, like, someone came in who was talking about how he thinks it's like inherent to want like novelty. And then the person who started the room was like, some people do like staying in one place for generations. And then I tried to bring up like pros and cons that I've seen. And then this guy kept being like, yeah, but like imagine money didn't exist. Like, wouldn't everyone want this? And I'm like, there are still things you'd lose. Like, even if you could get on a flight and see your best friend, you couldn't see them every week. If you're like traveling the world all the time. And then the other guy latched on to what this new guy was saying. The one who'd started the room was like, yeah, I want to see how can we turn these natives into or he'd said like, how can we get them to not exist? Like, he was saying things which were like, I was like, I can't tell if you're joking. He's like, not exist as in educate them to be like us and not so stupid. And I'm thinking, well, they're only going to want to be educated if you're also open to being educated about like their worldview. And like, you know, I feel like you got to understand it before you knock it.
Yeah, their terms are very like you can't. you have wow. Somebody has to define the terms, or else you don't even you can't have that discussion. Like that bothered me even just hearing because I was like, what? Like there's so much language there that doesn't make sense, and also it's it was a guy doing this.
Yeah.
Do you know? I think a lot of guys gossip and they don't know it's gossiping. They're like, have you heard about this group? They do this. I'm like, oh, have you ever met someone from that group? No, but they do this. I'm like, all right, okay, go on. So,
right. So like, it was interesting how when the other guy was like, I think it's human nature to be like cosmopolitan and curious, and some people aren't doing that because they're risk averse because they've been burned before. And then the first guy was like, I think some people like that though. But looking back, it feels like he was doing it in a like, no, this is the group. Like, he was doing that to like define the group just enough that he could gossip about it.
Yeah, yep.
As opposed to like being truly open to any ideas. Because I was like, well, it's interesting that two people who agree basically that cosmopolitans are objectively better, but like they have different ideas of why. And okay, so the one guy's idea that everyone deep down is a cosmopolitan, and some people just haven't been given the opportunity, would take away the first guy's opportunity to gossip about how they're choosing to be stupid. Like, because before that end of that conversation, he was like where I said I had to leave, and I just said like, oh, we're 3 minutes from the hour, I should get going. He was like, yeah, like, I don't know why Americans like complain about the education system. Like, it's so much easier to pass the SATs than like what we have here in the UK. And I'm like, but there are kids who are not prepared by the school system. It really depends where in America.
Yeah.
And like, he just kept like pushing this like, they're not trying, they're making excuses.
Okay. Right
and
on.
then like,
wow.
What?
That he's got a lot of nerve.
Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, how can we like get them to be more like us? How can we educate them? I'm like, I literally just told you, like, more funding for the schools.
Yeah. Wow.
Like more supports outside of it. And so yeah, it really does feel like he wanted this picture of people for him to gossip about untainted. Like, he didn't want my bringing up problems with the education system, or the other guy who agreed with him about the summary messing up the details by saying like they, you know, are risk averse for financial reasons, and he wanted to just say like these people are like different on some social way and that's wrong, and how do I get them to be like me? And that might also explain why he asked me like what I am before telling me why he started the room.
Interesting.
Yeah, he asked like, and then when I said I'm cosmopolitan, he's like, yeah, most people I know are too. And I'm like, yeah, like people tend to group based on that. I do wonder how many natives are even on Clubhouse, because like it tends to attract people who are like not very rooted in person, especially like where it is now, where it's no longer a place to find like scientists in your field.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say like there's so many assumptions that that guy made. So like, all right, so
Yeah.
cosmopolitan is different than people that like stay in the place they were born. Is that right? Is that what
Yeah,
we're
right. What about
okay?
people born
I
in
was born in San
yeah,
Francisco. What am I?
yeah,
Huh? Huh? Like, what if I stay here the
yeah,
whole time? Am I cosmopolitly, what is it, nativing or something? Like, yeah, no, 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 no.
yeah.
Yeah. So when these guys make these debates or these arguments over poorly defined terms. First of all, he's talking about risk aversion. That's in the field of psychology. Is homie studying psychology? You don't get to use risk aversion unless if you somehow have backed that up with you care about that level of research that uses it, which is pretty high. Like that's where like I wouldn't use that term. And I'm a nerd for
Mm,
psychology. I don't know enough about that specific field that looks at risk aversion, and I'm even
mm,
somewhat adjacent because I'm starting to care about like the idea of what moves you to do something or to stop somewhat. So uh
mm,
like he really just used that, he picked that term to sound smart, and that's
mm.
weird too because I'm like, well, are you trying to sound smart and well read because you think of yourself as cosmopolitan? Is that what this is? Like, are you the cool girl? Are you
I don't
the
know if
me?
he used that term exactly, but he was just talking about risk and the impact. But yeah, he was making a lot of assumptions regardless.
Yeah, it's regardless, and like I mean, it's you said it enough times. Somebody did. I don't think you would have plopped that out of nowhere. Unless if you identified them as closely speaking about the concept of risk aversion, but like you still could have called them out on it and be like, okay, do you mean by that thing that you keep saying? Are you talking about the
Mm,
psychological phenomenon of risk aversion, and if so, studied by who? Because there's multiple theories about that. So like.
hmm,
What are you saying about like you think that this human nature is this according to who? You can't start with nothing.
mm,
Or if you don't want to pick a specific person because you're like me and you're like kind of on the edge, I still point to specific people that inspire me. But I will say like, okay, I think embodied cognition is broadly correct. So if you ask me like what do I think about
mm,
human behavior, I think it has to be rooted in the fact that we need to navigate in three-dimensional space with certain limbs and organs as our actors in the world. Okay.
mm,
So if I start with
mhm,
that premise, then it follows why I make the examples that I do. So this is why I'm saying like leading with the theory. And if they can't do it, I'm suspicious that they are actually self-soothing. The gossiping is to self-soothe that
mm,
they could if they wanted to, though. They just, don't ask me about the theory. I have examples because I have a theory. I'm like, are you sure you have a theory?
mm, mm. Yeah.
Didn't sound like that guy had a theory. It sounded like he was like all over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, for real. Hey Lilith. Yeah,
Yay!
we are
Hi.
talking
Hi.
about like abstraction and when people think they disagree when they don't, or when they like aren't willing to explain and clarify things to like figure out what we're even discussing, and they just want to find like jumping off points to say things they want to say
Yeah.
and like kind of steer the discussion towards what they already want to say.
Hmm.
And yeah, just examples of that.
And them giving and I was sharing about how in math like the problem is we're not learning theory first. We need to learn theory really really young so that we know how to talk about theory, and then the examples are used to bridge. Not like we talk to somebody, we understand what their current theory is broadly, and we understand what ours is, and then we look for the metaphors they currently can understand because of their specific examples and experiences. And then we bridge them over to our theory with a metaphor. So we use metaphor bridging to take them over, as opposed to what we've been doing, which is like all the math schools and, like math schools, like the math universities, math programs and universities are still using a mantra of like examples first, examples first. If you give them the example, you'll hook them. They'll get interested. But then you're saying random examples that this person may have no familiarity with, doesn't relate to them at all. They don't know what you're talking about, and they never make it to the theory. But also you're giving them a habit now of just giving example after example after example, which turns into them goalpost moving. And I would say it's a worse game of telephone than that, because not that many people actually end up going to like MIT to study advanced mathematics or something. So you're getting like the guys that watched a podcast of a guy that got the degree at MIT. And off they go.
Yeah, like people are picking up partial info about what different kinds of conversations are and coming up with their own mental models of them.
Yes, they're coming up with a like choreography of like, I'm going to give these many examples and I'm going to do it like this. So they give a lot of examples that are ungrounded in any theory anymore, and they don't even know what it's like to like have a theory in mind while you give examples. They don't have it. And so there's a lot of men doing that right now because of the patriarchy, and it's imploding at this weird rate of like, I don't know, exponentially worse all the time. So you're also going to be noticing that, which is the other elephant in the room of like, why don't we talk about first principles? Well, then we keep having to talk about feminism, but that's valuable for you to notice it, and to notice that like, this is why I'm saying they've turned themselves into delusions. So they've flooded their brain with examples that contradict each other and are incoherent.
So this actually reminds me of something that the guy from Matthew's groups had said. To your point about choreography of like this many examples. So he had said that he can't tell when people are done giving their closing arguments. So he pushes back 3 times. And I'm like, that is just so arbitrary. So basically, like, he's not oh yeah, he said like, if it's like if I'm the subject matter expert, then I push back 3 times. And I'm like, okay, so closing arguments is the end point for you, not like coming to a point of either shared understanding or that you don't need to understand. And like, agree to disagree to him was more like giving in to who's in power, as opposed to like realizing you can actually move forward without needing to agree on a thing, like what color shoes you're gonna wear. You can wear different colored shoes.
Yeah, agree. To me, I think the agree to disagree thing is happening when people realize that they don't care and they brought it up for a different reason than actually understanding it, and they've lost interest. So they've lost interest, and now they're about to have to do unpleasant things, unless if they became interested all of a sudden, which they're not. They're never going to get suddenly spontaneously interested in something complex. They underestimated how complex it was. They're fucking embarrassed, and they need to go.
Yeah. That's a really thought-provoking question. What do the rest of you want to talk about? I've heard it in...
Yeah.
But yeah, That's pretty scary. Like, when someone sees like information sharing purely as choreography, because he was talking about this in a work context, like that he thinks his job is to refute what people say 3 times and then let him do whatever.
Like, I so if he ever has to deal with somebody smarter than him, they will hate him. I hope he knows that. Like absolutely hate him because they will see what
I
he's
don't
doing.
know, because here's the thing though. If he's done after 3 times, I feel like that's an annoyance, but like not on the level of someone who like truly has a different idea, and especially if it's like an idea that's like ungrounded, like someone who's like clinging onto a delusional idea versus, okay, this guy just seemed like okay, a difference I'm noticing between this guy versus the person who like wanted to armchair diagnose me is that this guy like seems like he's aware of his own arriving game.
Mm-hmm.
And he only cares about things in that context. And when someone's like, want to build, he's like, nah, agree to disagree, gotta
Right.
go.
Right.
Versus the person who wanted to armchair diagnose me thinks like, she's gonna build a better San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so pointing out any kind of like the awareness that there's a person who can exist who like agrees with her sometimes and also has different ideas is just such a threat to her. Must be kicked out of the building. Like she thinks of calling security. Like
Yeah.
yeah, because
That's traumatic. That's also traumatic. I think when somebody sees you as a threat, but they don't want to talk about why they see you as a threat in theory, that's kind of the problem. Like the examples of what you did doesn't really fit. So unless she has a theoretical explanation for why those behaviors would signify some other bigger problem. So she started coming up with armchair diagnoses to justify what she was choosing to do in specific.
Yep.
So this is your problem. So I like interacting with people who are theory first, theory last, theory all the time. And examples are handled very, let's see, lightly. Like you pick up the example to study it, you put it down. What you spend most of your time on is your model. So you rebuild the example in your theoretical model, but you only touch it lightly. You're not trying to rip it from other people. They can still have that object, that thing that they, even if it's a security blanket as far as you're concerned. But you have now studied it, not disturbing it, right? You're trying. This is why post-structuralism is so interesting. Post-structuralism lets you study something without disturbing it with your own biases as much as possible. Okay? So then the reason you do that is you can then make a copy of it, a facsimile for your model, for your theory. So if you spend more time doing that, that's factivation. And I would say that's pretty active. Like you may not be physically moving, but the thing about factivation is you are staying still and you're moving your hands, you're moving your tongue, you're moving your mental models, like you're spinning around it, orbiting. So it's more of an orbiting kind of movement, not directed towards a finish line. So if you're having a difficulty where it's like, this doesn't feel complete, like I haven't finished modeling this, one of the problems, the person holding that object that you need to study won't let you touch it anymore. They won't, right? Because I bet if you could get more answers about that person that treated you very poorly, about what they're like, how they got there, you'd feel a lot more satisfied because you would be able to model it and it would make sense in your theory.
I've gotten enough.
Yeah, well, yeah, but still, like, but like,
had to look back at.
But you had to do that process, is what I'm saying, to get satisfaction, and to go into, if this mode is right, then active factivic would take you to idle factivic. To get to the idle, you have to have enough information that you're like, okay, I built that well enough in my theoretical landscape that I maintain as like a diorama of reality.
Right. Yeah, I was like stuck in that mode for like a day and a half after of just
Yeah,
what the fuck just happened.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's active factivic, and it doesn't feel good, but it is actually
Mhm.
helpful, and our society says it's not helpful because they'll either misinterpret it as energy to be motivated,
Mm.
or if you get a little bit worn down and you start to when you start to go into idle, that's when they think you're stuck.
Mm.
Okay, so the cue I think other people are reading is just if you appear to be in the broadest sense higher or lower arousal, like broadly, so active and idle,
Mm.
and that we as humans actually do pick up on this because we would have had to figure out what other human beings were doing, and if they were running away, if they're running towards us, if they're busy walking towards
Mhm.
something, or if it's time for us to work together. So
Right.
we're having a really hard time abstracting that, and that's why I think we need to talk about abstract reasoning early and often and say that like I'm giving examples of how this has been applied to modern life, but this is a fundamental principle, a
Mhm.
fundamental theory of how human behavior operates, and that's by clocking if we're in active or idle, if we're in factivic or motivic.
Hmm. Mhm.
The tricky thing here is that if this is true, we will start to be able to clock it better through experimentation. And then that's going to put a little more responsibility on people who learn this model to try to get people to be in the right mode. But the cheat sheet is that like everyone's overfitting for motivic. So basically anything you can do to get factivic, it kind of makes it easy. Just try to get people into factivic no matter what. And like make them
So
comfortable with it. Go ahead.
I'm trying to think like for people I'd be comfortable trying that with versus not. So
Yeah.
I actually think the example of the guy from Matthew's group versus the person who tried to diagnose me are like
Yeah.
people I'd like try to clock as one or the other and then interact differently.
Mm-hmm.
So like with the guy from Matthew's group, given that like his worst is to just stand his ground and like, no, I have arrived this far. I'm not going to go back. Like, I feel like he's someone who I could potentially give an invitation to, like, you're welcome to. I don't know. Actually, now that I think, like, say, like, we want to talk more about such and such. You're welcome to participate or not. But he still might not seeing his, like,
Mm-hmm.
arrival being, like, torn apart.
Yeah.
So he may still need, like, security that, oh, we're just having fun over, we're not going to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like this person who thinks she's building, like asking, are you interested in, yeah, I do wonder what like the guy from Matthew's group would say to like an invitation to deconstruct like what's the best methodology for project management. He might say the thing we've been doing for 20 years. No, I don't want to spend 2 hours talking about it. Great. He can be in my life without being a threat to my safety.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like someone who is gonna jump at the opportunity to build but doesn't realize that it's not arriving.
Yeah.
Is gonna run over everyone's sandcastles versus the guy in Matthew's group would go like, sandcastles, why? They're pointless. Okay, go run your marathon then.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get
And
that.
I wonder whether people have been self-sorting worse recently. Because it felt like, okay, people who wanted to be like max arriving were like traders or, versus now, like there's this conflation of different roles of like who's a product designer versus who's a marketer.
So
A lot of the
yes.
jobs I'm seeing are like marketing in disguise, for example.
No, all musicians are supposed to be their own marketers. It's crazy. This is why I'm saying, like,
Mhm.
there is no selection for the factivic. That's why we just talk about motivation. That's why I'm saying we're overwhelmingly overfit. So, like, even if we should or should not apply a motivic uh, gear to this problem, we keep just doing that. So even people that say, or at least in name or in like the job description, they should be doing this building,
Mhm.
they don't experience it on a motivational level. They don't experience it on a like a drive. Like, that's not the engine they're running. So if you think of it that way, like, it's like an engine. So if you try to do a factivic thing with a motivic engine, it doesn't really work because your brain is trying to make you do something else. It's trying to, like, even if you want to build the sandcastle, your brain is in the mode to run. So you can't.
Yeah.
So the problem is, if you need to appear that you built the sandcastle, well, what do? You exploit people who build, and you take credit for their work.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. I have like two things that come to mind there. One is this person who tried to diagnose me, like, she goes to a bunch of hackathons and she comes in with the product requirements doc and has other people build it, and then gets all shook that they don't want to work for her anymore, and she can't even have an even bigger thing to take credit for.
Right.
And the other example that came to mind. Yeah, okay, another. So this person is just blatantly, proudly arriving. This new person I'm going to tell you about.
Mm-hmm.
And I like just rubs me the wrong way in that regard. But we've been able to not have problems like with these claimed builders. So this guy is a math professor at an HBCU, teaching them how to rap because he got into rap
Cool.
and like how to get into flow. And
Hmm.
then which I think is just really funny. Like, he's a white dude teaching black nerds how to riz.
Interesting.
And then
Hmm.
we were in a conversation about different fields and which like have serious understanding of anything, and is college actually valuable. And he was like, it is, because there are all these events at colleges where people can observe and learn how to talk in a way that's going to get them through an interview. And then I and several people had responses, because this discussion had started with like student loan debt and like, did the US F up basically. And I was like, I don't know how many of the people with student loan debt weren't able to get that first job because they don't interview well, versus like maybe there are people who got that first job and like weren't as good at the job as they were at interviewing and weren't able to hold it, or maybe they weren't able to get good mentorship to learn to do the job well because the mentors were just all talk. And like, that guy had nothing to say about it, and he just kind of laughed and like enjoyed the conversation kind of socially. Just like bantered with people. And like, it's like he knows his place as an arriver, and he flaunts about the cushy job he was able to get by it. And I'm like, I'm glad that worked out for you. I don't know if it would if all of society did that. And it's like he recognizes that I'm in a different lane than him, and it's like there's kind of this agreement of like, I won't mess with you if you don't mess with me.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like this person who tried to armchair diagnose me was just like I felt like she projected that I like understood her super well, like as a disabled person, as like someone not from SF, like as a woman of color, all these levels.
Mm-hmm.
And like she's like motivic running past while I'm like okay, we agree on this and this and this, but there's so many things where I have no idea what she thinks.
Yeah.
And she like felt like we were like besties. And then like her behavior led me to hyperventilate. And all of a sudden I'm emotionally unstable and she needs to diagnose me with something. She's like, I'm disappointed. And I'm like, I am too.
Well, and
Yeah.
in that example, so to pull it back, so okay,
Mm-hmm.
most people do not talk about theory or their own theory
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's not habituated as like a normal thing to do for them, and it's not modeled, so they don't
Mm-hmm.
even have options to own that. I do it differently than other people would, but I also am the only example some people have of anyone doing it at all. And
Mm-hmm.
if you imagine, like, that's going to be the truth for a lot of people. Like, they're not going to have many examples of people modeling how to model. Okay, so if you don't see it
Mm-hmm.
very much and you're stuck in doing as arriving land, you may memorize the one person you saw doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's your, what is it, he does 3 questions or something, or 3 pushbacks. That's your 3 pushback script. That's your choreography. Okay, but it's not the thing itself. So to get
Mm-hmm.
to the thing itself, you have to be able to practice your own method of not only doing the modeling in multiple ways
Mm-hmm.
that you do and don't like. And that's why I'm developing these tools to try to generalize it a little bit. Like Node is a tool to generalize. Or
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you not only need to do it by yourself, but you need to practice doing it with other people in different contexts and see if any of them work.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where I just cannot
Mm-hmm.
get my theoretical model across to another person. I had one
Yeah.
recently, and it's just like, well, I'm just gonna yell at them and leave. Like, it's just like, I was like, you know what? They're not seeing the bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture. This is annoying me. This is a waste of time, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the maybe I never will, like, that area of my skill set built up where I can get somebody from not modeling to modeling when it's in under certain circumstances. Some circumstances
I
I
don't know if
do
it's a
do
one
well.
person job.
Yeah, it's not. It shouldn't be.
Like, I don't know if it even can be. I don't know if you can like meet someone who has never modeled or been exposed to, okay, or like someone who has so many misconceptions about modeling
Yeah.
and like wants to arrive while saying they're modeling.
Yep.
Um I feel like people need to be in a place where there's less motivic motivation. Like,
Yep.
okay, comparing this
That's
group
why.
this person was hosting,
Yeah.
where she's trying to get a bunch of connections to help her fix SF and be the person doing it. Versus in Matthew's group, it's like a bunch of autistic people. It's like the small talk channel of here,
Mm-hmm.
where like the stakes are low, and if so, like this guy is just like, yay, a chance to talk about this thing, or like a chance to potentially get my question about it answered.
Mm-hmm.
And then if at some point he's like, I think this stuff you guys are talking about is nonsense, and we just like ignore it and keep going, then at some point he might be like, oh, this thing is news to me. Versus like people aren't in a mindset to receive information like that when they're trying to like arrive at lightning speed. You know,
Correct.
I
Yeah.
feel like even with this guy's like, I need to push back 3 times. If like in the middle of that, someone said something like earth shattering to him,
Mm-hmm.
he may be like, wait, what? Because like the script he has in his mind is like not that complex. But like this other person has like all these 10 different startup ideas to change SF, and she's looking for more, and she's looking to collaborate with the whole city
Yeah.
and like be connected with everyone and get funding. Like she's like not in a place to hear any more information about the things she's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
but she's putting them out there constantly, like asking for help.
Yeah. Because she has to keep
Or
moving.
like,
If she doesn't keep moving, she
yeah.
feels bad. So okay, so I highly encourage you to like put two little trains in your head. One engine has the motivic fuel and one engine has the factivic fuel, okay?
Yeah.
And you want to be let's say you can, I'm trying to think about how to put this. Maybe that's not even the best because like the train always goes, but like it's kind. I'm trying to think of this. Okay, I got it. Like Transformers. Okay. So when you have the motivic fuel, your little car is a car, and it's going to move, 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 and that's what the fuel does. When you switch over to the other engine, you put the fuel into the factivic engine. Now you're going to go into the, like Optimus Prime, and you're going to be able to do different things. Okay. So the fuel is your metabolic energy, all those processes. And the engine maybe cannot switch between them very flexibly, or if they do switch, there's conditions that have to be met that our society isn't meeting. So the person that you're dealing with, the problem is they're doing this because of how it feels and how it seems to be fixing the alerts that their brain is giving them about fix this, fix that, feeling that I have this, there's something wrong. So the problem is when you're motivic, they call that extrinsic motivation, right? Potentially. The problem is out there. And even if there is a problem in you, since the problem is out there, your brain will turn off your ability to process the problems in you. So all of your pain. So that's why they are doing this. When we are naturally going to have pain, it's just part of being alive. And we will make guesses about those pain that are irrelevant to their actual source. But regardless, we're going to have all of these things affecting us, and we need to have a solution when we need a problem solved that has a pain element to it. So the problem that we're having is we have abstractions of pain that are representations that are based on our physical body that feel as painful, if not worse, to us, but it's hard to put into words. That are these like traumatic states or episodic conditions that we're reliving. Okay, so if your brain is putting you into this horrible feeling, and the only way you know to make it stop is to throw all of your fuel in the motivic engine and be the car that just goes, you will say you are everything and anything under the sun to get to that finish line because you're not checking anymore. In order to check the pain, that's all of your self-awareness. So if somebody's motivated, they are not self-aware, is why I'm using factivated instead of motivated. It's because I think we need to distinguish this, because I think our brain and our metabolism does. So you will always find people frustrating if they say that they're interested in the details and the features, but they're clearly self-medicating with your body's ability to turn off all of the information about you and only lock into this blinders on finish line. So
that is really
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done. I think that's
good. Really interesting about like people turning off the self-reflection when they're thinking about systemic things all the time. Which I notice like sometimes there's a one-way where people are able to tie their personal experiences to systemic and then like think to fix the systemic.
Well, that's non-compressed though. That's what I'm saying. So if you think systemically and you're still thinking about yourself, you are not compressed and it is non-compressed. So think of it as the world's an icosahedron. You're an icosahedron. You're not flattening any of the points. The volume is maintained. Right. And all of those points then can relate to points out in the universe. And that's how you make sense of it. So you can think systemically better if it's factivic. You don't really think systemically if it's motivic. You just look like you are because you know that there's a place that if you get to, things will be better or worse for you or other people. So the whole idea is you're still looking for a place to arrive where the conditions are going to be better or worse, and you're trying to drive the car towards there. So it's a steering. That's not really systemic
Mhm.
analysis. That's steering through a system, and you're still not really responsive. And when things get worse or the system starts to hit you, your only real solution is to go faster.
Mm.
Unless if you're going to switch modes and go into the other one. But if everyone's committed to being and doing as arriving, and you're surrounded by people and doing as arriving, you have a really serious problem. Like, who's going to stop to help you?
Yeah. Um, I'm thinking about like archetypes of people in the like social impact space, and a lot of them I notice like they personally go through things, or people they know go through things, and their solution to that is to jump on doing more things, like to try to impact the world as a whole, um versus like really looking at their specific situation. And there have been like, I have a hard time sometimes distinguishing when it's a red flag, um because like there's, the extreme of the person I told you about. Then there's this friend in Chicago in my songwriting group, where we were doing a songwriting challenge, like working on something together. And like she wanted to do a song about burnout. Um, and I'm like, okay, like we can do, it was supposed to be a fun, like dancey song. And I'm like, we can do like, about like the experience of burnout. And then like when we were almost done, she's like, so what's burning y'all out? And like she said for her it's Trump. And then she started like writing these lines in the vein of like silence is violence kind of stuff. But I felt like that conversation was just steered in like the direction of her experience, as opposed to like our collective experience. And like, I'm going through autistic burnout and I'm triggered by stuff that happens in that group.
So
And
it's,
like,
yeah, yeah.
the,
It's tricky though.
yeah, like the conversation. Go ahead.
It's true. So I think this is a good place to step in. It's tricky though because, okay, this is what I'm saying. We have such a habit of this. You don't want to spend too much time on examples unless
Hmm.
the examples take you to the theory. So if
Hmm.
everybody has to say their example and like one person has a theory, now everyone who
Mhm.
prefers to just think from examples and doesn't feel confident thinking from theory is going to think that this person with the theory is imposing on them. So we're back at like, why
Hmm.
are you building a sandcastle? Fuck you. Don't you know who I am? Don't you know where I've gone? You haven't gone anywhere. And then they'll yell at the person doing the theory because the theory person doesn't move very much. So the theory person is, and this, especially in this culture, is less likely to have the credentials that you would hope they would. So that's really shitty, but
Hmm.
it is true. So, and if you talk to people in academia and they can get on board with this model, I think that broadly you get an agreement across the board on that one, with some exceptions in
Hmm.
specific fields that are doing it better that I don't know about. But broadly, that's the problem. So if you're doing example by example, but nobody is doing it for the sake of guiding you to show what their theory is. So everybody in the room should be starting with
Hmm.
their theory and then trying to get a sense
Hmm.
of what everybody else's theories are. And examples are a tool for you to discover theories when you're really far away from it, or potentially to once you understand where people are and where your theory is, to guide people to hear where your theoretical framework is by taking them from things they know to things they can understand because they're similar to things they don't know. So if that's
Hmm.
not the project, giving the examples is it because, well, I won't say it's like trauma dumping, but you know what I mean, where that sort of
Yeah.
thing happens. So it can turn into that because there isn't any switch over to factivic. Like there's no, oh, we're building now, we can put down the guard. You're still competing.
Mm. Right. Because I tried to ask a question about like, oh yeah, I was like, okay, like what about Trump? Like, is burning you out? Like how? Um, and like that led to a conversation about like okay, I felt like we were doing better before this question came up. Like we were talking about capitalism and work and like it was coming up naturally, like the themes were associating. And then she like asked the question of like what's burning you out? Um and then like the other person, so it was a group of 3. The other person said like work. She said Trump. And like rather than taking my chance that never came back later to respond with mine, like I went with like what about, because I didn't feel like that was clarified enough for me to like do anything with it. And then I forget exactly what happened. Like it led to these conversations, this like people need space to talk about stuff like that, and like how her litmus test is like seeing whether people can hear her vent about it for 5 minutes, quote unquote, without trauma dumping. um which I get that, but I feel like I haven't had space to do my litmus test. um and like then it went from that to like the silence is violent, and I know like this was about writing a song, like doesn't have to be that deep. But like I just felt like her idea of the solution for getting out of collective burnout was like the thing with like the lyrics that ended up in the song were good, but like the context behind it, I'm just like, what you're suggesting would leave autistic people behind. And I didn't have room to say that.
What was her idea?
Sorry, what?
What was her idea?
It was like silence is violence, like that people who aren't talking about these political issues as a problem, which I agree with. But also the solution like isn't just to keep parroting the same old narratives which are not inclusive of disabled people.
Yeah, and
And
also bullying. Like if you encourage somebody who has like a high sense of like I need to make things right, who's very young and very autistic, to go out and do that, or else they're causing violence, they will put themselves into a den of vipers and get attacked.
yeah.
So,
Yup. Yeah, and that is what another friend of mine has fallen into, like feeling like spreading these narratives is the only thing that can help change things. And I'm like, you can also build models. Like we have some factivic type discussions. Like he's clearly not as skilled at it as me, but like we're both patient to work through it. But his interactions with most people are like trying to Trojan horse them his views. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, yeah, because asking, do you want to have a conversation about such and such isn't gonna work if they're not down.
Yeah.
And then they think he's abrasive when he sneaks it in. And I'm like,
Yeah. So I'm testing out being like super literal and being like, I have a theory of like human behavior that is extremely dense, and I'm going to be referencing it all the time because I'm working on a paper on it. That gives me some leeway for people to be like, oh, I guess that's why she's doing it. And then and trying that in like social context where I'm like, well, if you insist on talking with me, then here we are. Like, here's this theory of everything. It's not really a theory of everything. I know why there's problems with theories of everything, but it's just like, and then I go off. But you may need to tell people this is a practice, and that we're all like horrendously out of shape when it comes to this. Like this is atrophied in us. So, oh
Mm-hmm.
yes, the VODs are available. Oh yeah, I do have a question. Are the VODs available, or a list of what topics will come up on future streams? I am working on the future stream topic thing. I'm probably going to have a list that I put on like Instagram, because we've been doing
Mm-hmm.
it a little bit ahead of time, and I'm thinking of like doing it for the month, and then we need to change the topic. We will, but in general, we try to make them abstract enough. But yeah, we usually have an agenda picture on the stream. Today we didn't, just because it's been a really weird week and I wasn't sure what to do. But yeah, usually we do so that people can follow it. The VODs stay up on here for 2 weeks, but it is on YouTube. And the YouTube is just Jane the Message, and they're like under lives. And there's a few that I've titled, but a lot of times we don't. So I'll if this keeps getting a little bit stronger and more robust, there'll be more organization behind it too. So I apologize that right now it's a little bit off the cuff, but I'm hopeful that since I'm just going to keep doing this, it'll get cleaner and the method will refine how these topics are presented or stored so they can be looked up easier. Because right now it's just like a pile of, like, we've done so many of these because it's a Sunday ritual at this point. But yeah, so that. And then what did I want to say about? Oh, yeah, it's a method. Okay, that's the point, right? Like, so if you can get somebody to practice factivation, the purpose of it at this stage, I think, of like humans, we have to remember what it feels like for ourselves. Like, that's the embodied cognition aspect of it. So there's a difference between motivation and factivation. I think our bodies are screaming at us that we can't do any more motivation. I think that's burnout. And I also think that a lot of our substance use patterns are reflecting that as well. Like, why did we end up with an opioid epidemic? Exactly. Like, if you can get into factivic, it does have a connection to the opioid and the oxytocin thing that I've talked about, where it's like, this is a pretty stabilizing state to be in. It's not exactly pain relieving, but it modulates your ability to pay attention to pain signals in a way that adrenaline doesn't. Adrenaline just knocks it out. Adrenaline, you're just unaware. You're forgetting to even pay attention to it. You're not even, your mind isn't allowing your working memory to use that information. Okay, so if you're freeing up your working memory to offload all of the motivational goals and then sort of like onboard this other stuff, you kind of don't know how to use your memory like that. It wants to keep locking onto the other one, wants to keep grabbing, like, no, I'm supposed to pick that up. It's like a juggler. Like, you're juggling knives and nobody will let you stop. And so we're trying to give you a little a little like knife rack, that, or a little knife block that you can stick this in and be like, look, if you need to pick it up, it's there. It's just there. But now we're going to stop until you feel it as a state that you can return to. And then there'll be specific strategies for you or for your friend. So we're trying to get into that state to repair our nervous system and repair our brains. I think, honestly, to repair our brains. And then to be in a repaired state around other people who can realize that's even possible. Because if all you see is motivic people, you think it's human nature, like that guy was rambling on, right? So, and this would be the arguments of like people that are trying to dissect capitalism, is they're saying like capitalism creates this condition that they think is human behavior. I am agreeing with that this is a this is a aspect of human behavior that has been artificially pushed into the spotlight when it's supposed to be the least common of the two modes, if or blended modes if they exist. But this like strict motivic behavior is not what our brains are supposed to be doing all the time. It doesn't work, and it physically hurts us. So you're trying to figure out, you literally want to figure out if you can feel genuinely good because you're getting healthier. And it's not because you've arrived at Whole Foods to get the veggies, to put like, everything is not a race, but we've defined everything like that. Like, time is going to move whether you decide to lift a pinky or not. But you need to be able to pay attention in a way that's not the same as getting motivated. And so it's the state that you're in That is the objective. Like, we want to get you to that state. There's got to be
Yeah.
infinite ways to do it.
So I resonate with all that. And the reason for bringing up that example is like examples of the framing of systemic stuff. And I kind of also like brought that one up to try to ease to a point which may open a whole can of worms. So how much time you got?
Oh, I think we're good. I think we're still early. What time is it? We started on time today. We
Yeah,
have
so
like
that's 2
50
hours.
minutes. We have 50 minutes till 3.
Oh, okay, so it's 3 hours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought it was 2.
It
So
has been, but
anyway,
yeah, we're doing 3 again.
okay, cool. So, the example that I wanted to get to is some of the HCATs in the past where you brought up a systemic thing and I had a hard time categorizing it, like to frame the discussion. And I felt like my helicopter could go anywhere. And I also wanted to know, like, what is the example in your life? Because, like, you mentioned an example in your life, and you're like, so that's why I want to have this discussion about systemic. And I'm like, well, I don't want to throw more examples about you. I want more context about your example so I can decide which examples from my life are actually relevant. Otherwise, even though you started with your theory, it would still become a competition for whose examples get talked about, which I feel has sometimes happened in the like months ago, like last year on this call. Like, we would be free associating and I know there are times this person has been me, and there are times it's been other people where someone would just get into stuff that's very specific to their life and not really going in any abstractable direction. Like, I know I've been bringing up a lot of examples from my life recently, like today, and also like a lot of them are recent examples, but not at least I'm not consciously aware that I'm like doing this, like, please help me figure out my life, so much as like, oh, that thing you said reminded me of this thing in my life. Here's a data point that may be relevant to us both. But it used to sometimes be like this light mention of theory and then caught up in whatever, in like someone else's examples and then like free associating from there. So I do feel like scoping, like I like when there's those graphics for the conversation. It's like, okay, so here's the topic.
Yep.
And here are like the subtopics that you've already thought about.
Yeah.
And like maybe there's a way to do that in groups too, like go around the circle and like, okay, what are, things that are top of mind for you, which I didn't feel I could do in the songwriting group because like I felt a signal of unsafety when she mentioned that was a reason for burnout, and like she has ideas for how to fix that, but she hadn't gotten specific about them. And so like I felt the need to ask, like, what do you mean? And that brought up like more and more cans of worms, which like none of us were equipped to resolve. Also, it was in the middle of a motivic write a song in 3 hours activity.
Yeah.
Which I don't think like I think if we're gonna do a burnout song for something like that, we got to keep it light. Even if it's about burnout, not like talk about the nuances of Trump without having time to get into nuance.
Right. Right.
But
interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting to me. So, when I'm having specific examples, my habit, and I do not know why, which is why I've been trying to unpack it and understand. But my habit has been, okay, this specific thing happened to me. What is the model that I'm working on? And is my model still sound? Do I need to adjust? So when I bring up an example, I actually want to leave the example right away. Like I don't how to explain this. I wish I could just live in the land of theory in some ways, but I have to learn the world from examples and then check the theory, live in the world. Like I would like to have more time as an outsider with access to, like I wish my brain was an LLM. That would be so fun for me. So but I don't this is going to sound strange. I don't see a lot of value in my examples. Like I think that they only exist to explain why I started thinking about the theory, not because the example has intrinsic value or any like real specific, like there's like there's multiple ways somebody could think about the same theory that I am. This is just how I happen to, so that people know why I'm doing it instead of not doing it.
Got it. So I understand that, and I'm willing to go there with you on a day like today. And there are other times in the past where you have mentioned emotions and affective states coming up for you as a result of these examples and feeling blocked by that and feeling the need to do something about that. Which that is an intention. That is a direction. And like, for example, when people were telling you to run for office and like trying to make sense of this phenomenon, and it led to a direction of someone in this group saying you should run only for president.
Yeah, I was like, that's so cute. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I just the fact that that came up, I don't remember how, like, the fact that I worry about like, okay, there are times where you've brought up an example that was like very impactful on your life in ways that was affecting your affect in the moment. And knowing, you know, your situations in the past with meltdowns and time for recovery and suicidal ideation, I feel the need to be careful in certain ways. And sometimes I feel like other people on the call are not being careful in those ways. And I also feel like sometimes when we open up the modeling from your specific example to thinking about society at large, like, for example, the issues your students were running into, to, okay, let's talk about education as a whole. I feel like I may have had more to say if we'd talked about the specific challenges your students were running into, and like I could then use my user experience research, like journey kind of mindset of, okay, this is where they're getting stuck, identifying that, and then like go up to the model, as opposed to like the education system in America, like that's like focusing exclusively on the parts that are like less in my purview. And like, you know, there are less like points of analogy to grab onto for people from different backgrounds. And there's more potential for a lot of different things to come up. And it's in a state where like you're already feeling big feels as you're facilitating, and like opening up this room for all of these cans of worms to come up. And sometimes I feel like I'm the person, or maybe one of two people, who's trying to like keep tabs of like the emotional temperature of the room. And I know that for myself, when I'm really emotional, I need to narrow the kind of scope of what needs to be cognifactored to get to a point of clarity. Like okay, for example, this person trying to diagnose me. At first, like, I was like, shit, is SF as messed up as Chicago? Like, I came to SF to get away from Chicago for a while. And like thoughts like that. And then I moved to like this person like had some warning signs and just how extreme arriving they were.
Right.
And well, okay, and like being able to kind of narrow it that way versus opening up a whole new like can of. So sometimes but like if I had tried to node with other people there, then they may have been like, oh, it does sound like maybe you're living with this condition that she mentioned. Or like, oh, like even my therapist like asked just like for like, by the way, what's her race? Which like I just said it and then like, I mean, we had like a little bit of conversation about that and then moved on, but like someone else might have just latched on hard to that. And like, so I feel like there's another layer in between the theory and the examples of like the connection between them, like your process for getting there.
Yes.
And then I could figure out, like, I could give you some options of what level would you like to discuss on. Like, for example, with your students, it was so there's specific challenges your students are having. And then it led to this like education as a whole is messed up. And like there's, the lack of understanding of the body, and there's like the way things are taught. And like I could have picked a couple of steps in between and said, I have thoughts like in between in your how you went from your example to your theory, and like I have thoughts on this level, and on this level. Which would you like to, or like I have more thoughts here than here.
So
where would you like to?
Yeah, so okay, so let me give you some backdoor into the stuff I'm doing for my paper and what I'm looking at. So I mentioned a little bit about working memory, and this is what I've been looking at. So you are familiar with, you were talking recently about episodic memory. There's also semantic memory, and there may be a split in semantic memory with sequences and with like more feature based, right? Like the semantic for when it happened, and the semantic for like why it happened could be different, basically. Okay. So my work, if is this correct? So when you go into the abstract mode, you may have a switch in your working memory where you're not as good at sequences, but you're a little bit better at like keeping track of how features are related and why. Like not so much like a cause and effect in a linear progression, but cause and effect in like a dynamic, like interdependent field of relationships. So you're using your working memory to keep track of multiple aspects of like this is why it would be the model, like the like the physics of it, like the like thing you're trying to understand, like the principles that operate the behavior. So for example, like I really don't even remember what my problem with my students was because I wasn't thinking about it that way. So my working so my working memory is going to have a hard time especially hard time switching between the modes, because I think my brain is particularly funky, which is why I've needed to develop this theory to try to understand like why am I not able to go with people to examples. It's really really hard for me. Like I have the thing with
Mhm.
autism where we're not very good at retelling stories in sequence. So if you that was even
Mhm.
in my test when I was a little kid, but they were like, oh, that's not that bad, she'll be fine, she'll grow out of it because she's a girl, right? But it's there, so I even have
Mhm.
evidence of that. And they didn't do the test that you would for an autistic to really hammer down what that was. But I know that that's likely to be a contributing factor because there's evidence. But so okay, so let me think about it. There's another point that I wanted to get to. When I have an example and I'm bringing it to something larger, I do that because my brain is much more interested and able to do that because my working memory knows how to use that information, and it doesn't really know how to keep track of sequences. So like when you tell me your example, I also have a hard time keeping track of that. So if I were in a very neurotypical environment where people give a lot of episodic um, memory sort of examples, and
Mhm.
like I actually don't know what people are talking about very quickly. Like I can't remember. I don't know what they're saying. I'm very lost, and I disengage because I neurologically can't do it. So I think
Mhm.
that's where my disability may be a bit more striking, but it's hard to talk about because it's so weird. Like to think about our brains operating on that
Mhm.
level, like you can just take it for granted. So like I have to do
Mhm.
this with my husband. Like if he tells me about his day, at a certain point my
Mhm.
brain just turns into white noise like pretty quickly, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to hold on to the non-sequential, the semantic episodic in my memory,
Mhm.
so that I can figure out why the hell he is telling me this, so
Mhm.
that when he finishes talking and I'm supposed to say something, I can say something coherent.
Okay, so I hear that, and I am trying to look for similar, why are you telling me this when you mention your theory? So I don't steer the helicopter in directions that are gonna open up more cans of worms
Does it make
without clear.
I can answer that
It does
question.
make sense.
I can answer that question. So why am I telling you about this theory? Because this is the theory that I'm currently telling you is the highest level of abstraction I can currently model. So I always talk to people at the level that I'm currently working at, and it's usually not very successful because I'm getting so far away from people at this point. It's really difficult. And so I'll jump down a little bit to be like, oh, so in concrete terms, I looked at this study, or I'm looking at this field and this term, or this specific scientist. I really will hammer in
Mhm.
on that, right? So then people kind of know why I ended up all the way out here. But I'm trying
Mhm.
to, my project at all times is trying to understand what humans are really doing, and I am working on
Mhm.
that at an unusually like consistent, uh maybe not pace, but like I kind of am doing it all the time, which sounds, it's
Right.
it sounds cool kind of, but I don't think it is. I just don't think I have a choice. So um if I were less equipped to try to answer that, I could be in danger of becoming like delusional or something like that. Like that's a concern because my society is delusional.
Mhm.
So I always appreciate when somebody gives like an out of the box thing. Like for example, be like, maybe you should be president. I'm like, I don't know. I've never thought about that before. Like, let me think about that for a week. Let me just think about that for a week. Yeah, that's not going to work. But but with me,
Mhm.
with people that don't think sequentially, they're always trying to test reality at like the highest level they possibly can because I can't predict
Mhm.
the sequences. So it's better for me to go all the way up there. So the reason I'm doing it is because I see it as work that's not being done. And
Mhm.
if that work had been done, I wouldn't need to do it because I would have a way to navigate the world, and these questions that I have would be answered pretty well. Or like we'd have a much more philosophical society for one, and we'd be much more scientifically advanced for two. We would be way less
Mhm.
superstitious. We would have way less mental health problems.
Mhm.
So I know we're not in that society, and it's
Mhm.
because um, I cannot I cannot learn the sequences. Like, and I think that's there's going to be
Mhm.
some autistic people like that, and I think that's where I am, and I think that's why I have such difficulties. Um, yeah, it makes life hard. It really does. But I know that there's people who have similar problems to this where what I really want to talk about is like human beings don't know when something is a delusion and isn't a delusion if it's popular. Like they don't really understand that, right? So I'm thinking about that a lot, and then I want to talk about it at a level of abstraction that maybe everybody would be interested in fixing it. Because if everybody fixes it, then I'm less disabled. Like literally, I'm doing it because I hate being this disabled. Like it's and I
Mm-hmm.
like other people, and I bet they hate being disabled too. So like it feels good to have your disabilities accommodated. I don't want to not be myself. I don't want to not be the thing that I am. But if we don't
Mm-hmm.
figure out some of these behaviors, then my disability is never going to be accommodated. And I just think that's cruel. So I talk about it because I'm concerned about the cruelty towards people who can't use doing as arriving, and the fact that doing as arriving is self-destructive because it destabilizes the structures that it doesn't stop to take care of, which is like all of them. Like
So,
yeah.
mhm. Thanks for sharing all of that. Um, so when you bring up like new things related to this theory, that also relate to experiences in your life, um, yeah, I think it may help to like get more of the features and relationships close to like the big topic you bring up. Like, for example, last time when we were talking about like shame and not being taken seriously, and like at the beginning, I was like, well, before I'd said anything, I had like written down some examples from my world, but they would have been like very far from what we ended up talking about. And so I asked like, what do you mean by that? And you gave more information, and I was like, okay, the stuff I'm thinking about is not as close in my model to other stuff I could say. And we ended up having a conversation that built on your model.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I had done that and asked like, what kind of situations are you referring to? What's the context? Like maybe there's a better way I can frame this where it's not like asking you to give the play-by-play sequential, but basically I'm looking for the bullet points, like what you do where you're trying to think of what are the semantic things. Like I want to know what are the semantic things too. And without the episodic, I may not know how to categorize the semantic things because like we have different language systems and there may need more clarification there,
Mm-hmm.
which is why like super open-ended, we're going to talk about shame in not being taken seriously. Like I didn't realize that this was in the context of like getting our basic needs met and navigating the legal system. Like my mind jumped to maybe this is when you're talking about your theory and getting bullied online.
Oh.
Because like my mind jumped to the other context that I have of your life
Yeah,
if
so
you don't tell me
yeah.
the context that something came up in.
So okay, so there are a couple things there. So that just okay. Can you see how you like filled in a specific example automatically?
When I like thought you were talking about bullying online.
Yes.
Yup.
Yep. So
And my brain is too good at that,
yeah.
which is why I'm like, please give me context so I don't do that. I come from a tech bro, massive arriving. Like, my parents are such good arrivers, they were able to get immigration sponsored. Like,
Right.
I need someone else to or like I would appreciate if it doesn't always fall on me to ask for that context and
Interesting.
to come up with a bunch of scenarios in my head and to come up with scenarios including Jane was suicidal 2 weeks ago. Oh, fuck. And walk on eggshells.
No,
Because
okay.
that is really regulating for me, not knowing when it is and isn't an emergency.
Okay, so let me explain some stuff. Okay, so if I am bringing up a topic, okay, let me back up. So the specifics here work differently for me because I don't have this episodic sort of anchoring, I think. So why did I
Mm-hmm.
pick that topic? Because I'm like, I wonder how many autistic people have similar experiences to this and no language for it. Because
Mm-hmm.
having no language for it left me trying to process it with the tools I currently had, which left me dealing with a level of stress that was just impossible and very scary, and that I can articulate in my society. My society will call it certain things, right? And that's where I'm supposed to
Mm-hmm.
go to get resources, but it doesn't really help, which is frustrating. So I can have like an ideation up the wazoo, but there's really nobody that will fix the problem, which is so fascinating to me because of the nature of the problem and what it is in autism. And so we have an underemployment issue. I'm aware of this statistically, and I know I'm
Mm-hmm.
living it. So I'm aware that there's not a good opening line to say, hey, does this seem vaguely familiar to you? So I was reaching
Mm-hmm.
for language to describe something that I had learned to just take as like a specific example that is just me. It's only happening to me. I did something for this to happen versus like, oh, this is a systemic thing. This is really weird. I wonder I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if I allude to it, if people might
Mm-hmm.
have a bit of familiarity. So you can't trigger me like that. So if you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, if I'm upset or if I'm not doing well, it's purely because I am um, not able to navigate towards resources and support, and it just sucks. And I don't think it's fixable, but I can't always hold it together. I try to. I really do try to hold it
Mm-hmm.
together as best I can, but I don't know what's going to happen to me. And it's really scary sometimes because I know I have a disability and it's more
Mm-hmm.
profound than my society understands. So a lot of times if I bring up a specific thing, I am analyzing it to find the nameless aspects of the disability to then
Mm-hmm.
try to navigate towards support. So the purpose of it is to do that for myself. And since I realize I can't be the only person who might benefit, the experiment is to see if I start talking about that, do people understand what I'm saying who also don't realize they're holding on to the elephant's tail as well. Like, like if there's no words for it and you keep experiencing it, you can't communicate that even in your own head to sort out what you should do next. So I make it more general. I give the specific example and then make it a little more general to see if people do associate with it. And if you, for all I know, what you were gonna associate might have been related. I actually don't know. Like I can't know
Yeah.
that because I'm still building the model. I don't have a definitive thing. Like I don't even know if what I have is really ideations or not. I don't know. Like maybe autism, what's happening with them is
Mm-hmm.
categorically different than what's happening with typical people when they have a suicidal ideation. Because when we call the suicidal hotlines, we do the inverse of what those people are trained to say and do. We are not matching the pattern. So I don't even know. So that's why I'm not married to a framework being done. And if you if so interesting, so interesting. Do you because like you seem to have anxiety over anticipating what the person what experiences the person is going to point to or something like the specific
Yep.
examples. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know your model of all the things that are mapped together in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know when, like, where there may be something linked which may be activating for me
I see.
or for someone else. Like, as the person who doesn't know your model.
So
Like,
the
if,
activating part though, I want to ask a question because this is important. So that's like the activating is like a negative emotional affective state, right?
mm-hmm.
And then I think that a lot of those negative ones are tied to this motivic drive. So,
um,
like a threat, basically.
mm-hmm. Um, yes, and I am not physically resourced to be factivating all day, all week, based on whatever comes up. And I know that neither are you. And I don't know what's going to happen to either of us either. And I know that there are lines of thought, okay, like we're building the model either way, but there are paths that would be less likely to bring things up than other paths. Like, for example, that day we hung out in person, I thought about how maybe if I'd brought things up a little differently, things may have gone differently. Like, I didn't beat myself up about it because live and learn,
You didn't
but I
cause
do
that.
want to live and learn.
No, you didn't. You didn't. You couldn't have had control over that. Like you 100% couldn't
I
have.
feel like what I feel like I
No, 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 no,
so
no.
I
So, I,
so as someone who
like that. No, dead ass. Like you couldn't have. So I will hit a limit that has. It's just like filling a cup, and the cup's just too
Mhm.
full. You
Yep,
didn't. I
yep.
just. I just don't know where that limit is because my society doesn't believe I even have such a thing. Like you're just supposed to go 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 go. So there's no way for me to really fix that. And there's like the
So
only thing that can happen is that like I just know it's not an emergency for me to hit that limit. Like that wasn't bad. It would be bad if I never ever got the resources that I eventually am going to need. But we tell people that that state in and of itself is an emergency. It is not an emergency. It is rational. So I was having a completely rational response. I got a ticket when I left because I didn't feed the meter, and I just like just about
sorry.
no 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 no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like then I had a meltdown because of that because blah, blah, blah. But like my brain has to process in the factivic mode. And what I want people to understand is like it doesn't destroy or kill me. It really it doesn't. It it's sad that our world can't respond to it as like, oh shit, just give her money. Or oh shit, just give her medical care. Oh shit, just give you know what I mean? Oh shit, just stop lying to her. Like that would be the best one. Honestly, oh shit, just stop
I wish
lying to
I would
her.
have called you an Uber home or something.
No 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 no.
Because like, you could have gotten into an accident
No.
straight up.
No 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 no.
And
I'm used to I can drive short distances while having a meltdown. It's like I've been doing this for like 15 years. It's totally fine. So like there's no reason for me to pull myself into a space that like I don't really occupy and try to then I don't know fit in or like whatever. Like I'm not going to be able to do that. So I just occasionally will not be able to take it, and that is a little bit of a I'm trying to think how to put this. Like maybe it's a little bit damning about the world we live in that like it pushes autistic people into that place, but I'm not the only one. And if I can get through it, then other people that are stuck in it right now are dealing with it. They'll know that like it's just part of what this world is doing to us right now, and um it's not in and of itself a problem. It's a problem that like I'm having to experience it so much, but I don't
Mhm.
think the environment will I think this current environment is just going to make that happen. And I me going through this is an argument for changing the environment, and that's why I talk about the environment at the level that I do.
So I agree. And at the same time, I have another autistic friend who is really, really like going through it medically with a bajillion different conditions, got a very difficult diagnosis recently, which the medical system just doesn't know about, and is dealing with financial stuff on top of it and trying to immigrate, like all of that. And the two of us have like never had a situation where a meltdown happened as a result of like something that came up in that conversation. And this is, and like he's very
Oh,
like
it wasn't
trying to
from the
understand.
it wasn't from the conversation. I was like actively gonna have a meltdown that day. Like I just was already past my limit.
Okay.
Like I could
Okay,
have been
so
stepped on by a cat and I would have had a meltdown.
did you have a sense of that before you came to meet up?
I don't know because I don't have a good way of excusing myself. Like if I tell people like for example, like I did that show last night, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you helped me to be able to do because somebody was suspicious that I was not reliable because I had to cancel from a meltdown.
Yeah. Um, I was that the one with like that super famous,
Yeah.
like awesome. I'm glad you were able to do it. Um, yeah, so actually this program that I did with Matthew, and even there's even a like like a single session thing, where like we learned about meltdowns, shutdowns, and autistic burnout, and identifying when it might happen. Like, you know, the I'm probably going to have a meltdown today days, and like seeing what we can do about it,
Did they
which
have
like
did
I
they
would have
have
been totally fine.
question,
What?
did they have advice for if that's like every day for the past 6 months? Because that's where I'm at.
Yes.
Like I don't remember what it's and for all I know every day for my entire life. Like I have been yeah, like I'm at risk of having a meltdown literally all the time. So it's like I don't know. I just had to start rolling the dice and going out anyway. Like I've had meltdowns after most of the ruckus and rumpuses I've ever done. I just have them in the car, and it just I have positive meltdowns sometimes. I have meltdowns more frequently. I don't have aggression during them, which is nice. I just cry and I sometimes
Mm-hmm.
hyperventilate. And if I have enough of them in a row, I have catatonia, and now I have medication for that. So I have a catatonic meltdown thing with my autism, and it's probably different. Um, but like I don't know a lot of people whose bodies stop moving, and like that's the only one that I worry about because it's a little bit worse, and that one is
Right.
a little bit easier to predict if I'm gonna have that. But everything else, like no, I really don't have control over it, and I'm not super interested in figuring out how to stop having them because I spent most of my life afraid I would be put into a mental institution if anyone ever saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I fucking need to do that. I think society needs to actually adjust around me at this point. And that's just my personal stance on it because
Yeah.
my meltdowns have never really changed in frequency, only severity, and the more
Mm-hmm.
severe ones come from lack of resources. And I if somebody says to me like we'll give you resources if you stop having meltdowns, I will give them two middle fingers and tell them to fuck off because I don't care, because I know there's going to be people like me and people who can't manage them even beyond me, and if I don't figure out a way to get this to um, fit in society that's acceptable, then they're totally fucked. Like, even if I get frustrated with people who have worse meltdowns than me, even, right? It can be very frustrating, but I know they're not doing it because of me, and I know if I can
Yeah,
communicate to people, I'm not having meltdowns because of them. My brain,
I
it
know.
yeah, my brain. Well, I know, but it's just it's really important. My brain is not in the right environment, and I cannot create a facsimile of a better environment without a lot more resources than I have. And I will keep trying to find practical ways to get that. But then I literally will still have meltdowns. You just won't have to see them. And
Yeah,
that's what it's gonna be. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of it's yeah. I don't know.
right.
Yeah. I, I'm
Yeah.
I'm a little touchy on that one. So it's just important for me to express that like I
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
I, I I hear all of that.
But if my meltdowns make you
So
uncomfortable, that is something that I can take into account, and I can be extremely clear that like I can't go out
oh
because like
no, it's just
it might
concern for
though
your safety.
it might make people uncomfortable. That's the thing. So like I know that they're confusing, and I yeah I'm that's just like what I have to deal with. You know, like I
It's
didn't
literally just concern of your for your safety and the safety of anyone else who's around. If because there have been times there has been a meltdown domino effect on this server,
mm-hmm,
and there have been times where I was one of the people who held out and caretook for others, and there was no one left to caretake for me.
yeah.
And there were times where it happened at a frequency that I just wasn't able to spend much time around here. And I resonate with you saying that yeah, we should no meltdowns is not a realistic goal. Matthew has said that as well. But it is about the severity and or for some people frequency like me to be able to limit the kinds of symptoms like the catatonia you're describing by noticing like so after doing this webinar with Matthew, I was able to notice when like I found patterns in myself, and I noticed that getting triggered 3 times in a single interaction, or like one really really big trigger, but 3 like just little anything can fill the cup ones in one interaction is what does it for me.
Mm-hmm,
um so I leave after 2 now. And that has led to me having maybe a couple meltdowns a month as opposed to like multiple a week and just being in constant shutdown mode, which has really helped with my burnout recovery. And I'm still limited on how far I've been able to get because of the whole unemployment situation. But at least in the meantime, I'm not having so many meltdowns that I'm so shut down that I'm unable to prepare food for myself, and
mm-hmm.
then I'm more weak and immunocompromised and likely to walk into traffic and stuff.
Right,
So
right.
that's the kind of like noticing those kind of signals there, and also noticing the recovery period post meltdown and like what can I realistically do after, which it sounds like you're making progress with that as or progress. I like you're learning about that as well in your way. I can take a look back at that webinar and like maybe bring up some of the high level themes of that. That's something that might be helpful. Because like I agree with your point about like society needs to accept that people have meltdowns and not institutionalize them for it and get used to that. And at the same time, if a space is like having, if this space if we can build both more awareness of our individual cups and where they are. Like maybe instead of nonstop talking for the whole HCAT, we could do like 20-ish minutes and then take a little break to check in with ourselves and then like do the next. And if we can find ways to communicate what we're talking about, like the context in a way where it is easier to follow along without having to ask anyone to do anything they can't, like, you know, asking you to do sequential. If like it could end up in a situation where there's less caretaking needed total, which means there's less anticipation needed total, which means more people can participate, especially more people who are close to the cup flowing over themselves,
Do you?
which can make all.
I have a question. Do you think that
Mhm.
seeing other people have an autistic meltdown triggers autistic meltdowns?
I don't know about seeing one, but I know that a situation that can lead to one for one person, an interpersonal situation, often leads to it for multiple people. Also, caretaking for someone through an autistic meltdown can lead to it for people, including me. And especially when it's after having an intense discussion.
Okay.
After, you know, it's often been when these calls went over time. I've noticed that
Okay.
it's happened on this server.
Okay, so a couple things with that. So, all right. So, I think I have a different philosophy than Matthew does on this. I think that responding to an autistic meltdown with caretaking is not appropriate. I think that we just need to have them. What Kyle does when I have an autistic meltdown is he checks if I need to. He'll just put me in the car if it's really bad, and he'll drive around till it goes away. Or he'll just be like, "You okay?" And if I'm like, "Yeah," he leaves the room. He just goes away, and he does something else. And if so, like you kind of have to treat it like it's like a seizure to me. That's my experience of it. So I don't know how other people's work, but for me, I'm still in there. If I need to cognitively take over, I can. It's not elegant. But it's not, and I know he's not saying that you should caretake, but I'm saying that I don't think we should caretake. Affect first aid is if people really want to help with it. If it's not a requirement, you can always even take that out if that's not clear, because it's really important. I think we need to learn to self-soothe, but I also know that us self-soothing can look incredibly unsuccessful relative to the self-soothing of a typical person. So I think that, like, if my meltdowns are distressing for people to see, I will leave them to not see it because it's disruptive, right? So if
so seeing it,
yeah, or knowing about it or whatever, like I would rather my meltdowns not be a burden on other people, but I don't actually experience it as a burden myself. Like, it's a necessary way for me to process the world as it is. If I were in a different world, I would need different processing tools, but I can't process a world that I'm not in. And I don't want to confuse myself about what world I'm in because I have problems using other tools. So for me, it's been more effective to have these big meltdowns and to work through these bigger things. But if it's not the shared project, I can limit that potentially on the stream too. It just was what I was interested in pursuing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see two paths forward. One is to clarify that in the rules that people see when agreeing to be in the space. And two, seeing or knowing about your meltdowns is not burdensome to me. It is sometimes a learning experience because I, as someone who has done the thinking through, like, when is my cup a third full, when is it half full, when might it be a good time to get my weighted blanket so that I can process why and be less likely to have as bad of a meltdown as I'm doing it. As someone who's done that, I sometimes see the patterns in others as well of like, oh, they had a meltdown after I said this exactly. There are situations where I said this instead, and it was people. And more importantly, I feel the need to caretake sometimes for other people who are on the call as well. Or if other things come up, like for you, like the suicidal ideation. And I genuinely want to know you're okay. I want to help if I can. I don't want you to feel the need to like keep that from me. Like if it was like if I saw that as burdensome, like I wouldn't be here. But yeah, I agree with you that we need to work through this stuff and not just write people off. But I do feel genuine anxiety being in this space where that is the meltdown domino effect is a thing that happens often.
See,
And
and
that not everyone knows is a thing that
yeah,
may happen when
yeah.
they're tuning into the stream or joining here, and where it might be life-threatening for some people to
Okay.
have a meltdown.
I did not know that my meltdowns or anyone else's meltdowns I was not aware of that because I have had the approach of treating meltdowns as your personal time, like that it's your thing, your experience, and that nobody can be in your meltdown but you, and that it's not personal. So I've never had a meltdown because of another person having a meltdown personally. And like so when I was crying, I don't know, I was just like more overwhelmed, and then I had a meltdown later. When I have a meltdown, I uh do not look normal at all. And
Mhm.
I have tried filming a little bit just after it. If I've never had anyone actually film a meltdown of mine, Kyle could probably
Mhm.
do it. I think they look like I'm crazy, and I don't think it would do anything but scare people if they actually saw them. So they're not emotional. They are a byproduct of managing the stress of being neurodivergent. And if people are not able to manage the stress of being neurodivergent in the space that I've created, I can do some more policing of that because that's really important that nobody's creating a habit or like a standard of becoming destabilized. I don't know what meltdowns really are. Like I don't know what mine are. I don't know if they're different than other people that report them. Um, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't see it as like anything but an equation of like environmental stuff, and I don't even think bad environmental stuff. It's like lights. I don't know. Too
Right.
echoey. Yeah. I
So,
don't. Yeah.
so I agree with all of that. Okay, so meltdowns can happen from emotional stimuli as well.
But
Like,
well,
um,
the question is like, okay, so I don't know about that. Like for me, I don't know if that's true for me. So if I have a
mm,
meltdown and people are involved, it's because they are threatening me, like literally actually doing something very threatening. That's the only time that I've had it from people where they've either done something so socially complicated or confusing, and I know that they're not
mm,
going to answer my questions, and I'm basically like in a situation where like I don't want to be there anymore because I know I'm too disabled to be there. So it's not like interpersonal stuff. Interpersonal stuff I'm a pretty I don't want to say like what's assertive person. Interpersonal stuff I'm a very assertive person. And so I just have a disability that makes it difficult for me to process certain kinds of information, and I don't like being extremely disabled around people that don't understand it. So it feels really threatening around other people. But I don't really think I experience it as like I might have emotions around uh processing something very large where it's like, oh, that's a big relief, or oh, that's a lot to take in. But maybe mine is
yeah, a lot
a
of
little
people go,
different.
there we go.
Yeah. But I don't know, like just because other people don't respond that way, the way that I do, doesn't mean I need to do it less. Like that's how I respond to that level or that volume of problems.
I understand. Would you say that that day I was referring to was in response to a lot to take in?
No, I had no
Uh,
money and I was freaking out. I literally like have almost no way of figuring out how financially I'm going to be okay as a person. So I wasn't sure if I was making the right decisions. I was processing
yeah.
how many people were able to wear nice clothes. I was thinking about how there's this contrast between what people are presenting themselves online and what you see people walking down the street, and then what different cities look like. How much don't I know? So just thinking about like standards of living, and
Mhm.
knowing that that's always going to be challenging to fix for anybody, but that I have absolutely no idea how to do it.
Right.
And there's no building I can go to. There's no social worker I can go to. None of that exists. Um, and I will just have to white knuckle
Right.
until something gets better somehow or doesn't. So yeah, I don't know. Like I just think
Yeah.
that's pretty
I
much it.
hear,
Yeah.
yeah, I hear all of that. And I have noticed a pattern where the a lot to take in on this stream tends to be a lot to take in for multiple people, because something someone says often opens a can of worms, which then triggers someone to say something which opens up an even bigger can of worms, and it's just this flood. And for me
What is a
anyways,
can of worms? Can I get that defined?
can I go to the bathroom real quick and then tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me check what Jamie is saying. That stressed me out too. I once had an argument because someone tried to tell me that I'm wasting my life saving money and not spending it. And then I did some research that people must have more money that they're than they're stating, and these narratives to keep us spending and keep us poor. Yeah, like it makes sense to me to think about all that. I don't know. Like it's interesting. Yeah, I have a hard time when I'm going places too, Jamie. Like people will talk to me. I'm like, I don't know if you really want to talk to me. It's so strange. That's why I like having pretty strict like borders around why I'm there. Yeah, are defining to us what is correct, and we are trying to do what is correct by people. Yeah, and it's contradictory, and it can become incoherent really quickly, which is interesting. It's weird too, because like the society at large will tell you like what's okay to get upset about and when, and then I'm like, oh, finally, it's okay to get upset. Oh, thank goodness. And then they're like, never mind, we're back to work. We're back to this, that, and the other. I'm like, I thought we got to be upset. What? Are we not gonna do anything? Was that all you guys needed? 5 seconds?
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
So, when I was talking about can of worms, I meant like something really complex, which could have a bunch of potential implications, which could be emotionally charged for people. So I'm gonna give the example of there was a former HCAT which ended in someone getting kicked out of the group. And it involved a conversation about transness.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one person who had the realization during the call that they may want to detransition. And then someone else joined and talked about how they had just come out to their dad. And then these two sharing their stories, just juxtaposed, free associated like that, led to assumptions being made about why things came up. This is back to that point, which led to multiple people having meltdowns and someone getting kicked out. We are talking about meltdown domino effects on this server, like when one person. But actually, that may not be the best framing of that. I'm sorry, because I see you asked me questions about like, does seeing a meltdown trigger them for me, and I said no. So what I was getting at more was when very emotionally charged, complex, and ambiguous things come up. So I've noticed sometimes people have meltdowns because of their, now sometimes, not, this is by far not the only reason people have a meltdown, but sometimes people have them when we've been doing a lot of processing, intense things have come up, and then something comes up which may lead someone to think of things in their mind which are overwhelming and or distressing for them, and then they might have a meltdown. And chances are they're not the only one. And also, before that, it tends to be like, because, we don't hit that overload point all of a sudden. There's like almost overload that comes before. And in that state, we often free associate things which may trigger other people to have a meltdown. And that dynamic has happened here multiple times.
I
And
did
I don't
not
think the.
know. Like dead ass, like I do have to end the stream, so this is kind of a weird note to
Mhm.
end it on. If I'm causing meltdowns, but like if I am causing meltdowns in people, like that's not the purpose of this. Like I will, if that's what's
I know.
happening, I will actually like stop streaming because I don't know how to. I'm not gonna. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna be able to figure that out. Like the point of this was
Would you be
to.
open to conversation about some small things we may be able to do to decrease the frequency of it
Well,
for other people?
yeah, I mean the issue with that is I I don't even think I philosophically have the same approach to meltdown, so it wouldn't make sense. Like, it, I my if that's the feedback I'm getting, and this is like a major issue on the Discord as well, then I clearly don't know what I'm doing, and like that's not the purpose. Let me start that over. What I'm doing isn't worth that. Like there's other ways for me to be doing this. Like I do have a paper that I'm trying to write, so I mean I can just stop and write the
Mhm.
paper because that's not beyond reasonable. This has been really helpful, but it is really small, so it's possible that this is just the end of it for me. But I do have to get off the stream, and I'm
Mm.
going to go work on some stuff. But like that might be the right solution because there's a lot of autism experts. I have my own personal theory, and if people are more successful with the other autism experts and they want to do approach that's I don't necessarily want to do, like I don't actually want to fit into our society because I think
Mm.
it's horrible, but
That's the point.
that's the easier way to go, right? And if that's the better way to go, that's awesome. I'm going to leave space for people to do that and not get in their way, but I can focus on other ways that I can share my method, and if this doesn't work then I have a paper I'm writing. So yeah, anyways, okay, I'm going to stop the stream. Have a great one, everyone.